Hey guys, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. This video shows 47-year-old Fiona Beale, a primary school teacher at Eastfield Academy in Northampton, dancing sloppily in front of the pupils. Every one of her pupils enjoyed having her as their instructor. She was a committed educator who wished to make the most of her students' school time. Nobody in this video has yet to comprehend that Fiona's tale will be featured on newspaper front pages in a few months. We will thus talk about the events that took place in England in 2021 today. The details of Fiona Beale's early years are scarce. She was a lovely and amiable woman who liked her work and her students, according to many who knew her. She lived in Northampton, which is roughly 60 miles northwest of London, with her partner Nicholas Billingham, 42. According to the 2021 census, the total population of the urban area is close to 250,000, making it one of the biggest towns in England. Moore Street was the residence of Nick and Fiona, and it was on this peaceful street that the events of today took place. They spent 17 years together. Naturally, Fiona and Nick experienced highs and lows like any other couple. Here's what I know about Fiona and Nick's connection, though many facts will likely be revealed later as this case was concluded approximately 2 weeks ago. According to Leslie Oldham, who knew the couple well, I thought she was really nice. Leslie remembered that although they weren't holding hands or smitten, they appeared content enough. She was quite courteous and talkative when Nick invited her around for tea. You never knew how long a relationship would continue with Nick, because he was always a little of a ladies' man and liked being pampered by women. When Nick and Fiona became infected with a virus that was then circulating the globe in November 2021, their love ended. After testing positive for the virus, Fiona and Nick had to separate themselves, she told her loved ones, on November 1, 2021. All they needed to do was complete an online application and spend 10 days at home, but she texted her sister the very following day to let her know that Nick had broken up with her and gone out with someone else. It's crucial to remember that it happened in early November 2021. Nicholas Billingham remained in contact with his friends and family after splitting from Fiona Beale. He sent his mother a text message claiming that he had fled with Faye. He claimed to be content and to have a wonderful new life. After 10 days at home, Fiona went back to work after her recuperation. When she returned to work, co-workers who had learned about the breakup gave her a lot of encouraging comments. But many saw that she was affected by the separation with Nick. Nearly 4 months after splitting with Nick, at the end of February 2022, her mental health started to decline. She could no longer live in a home that made her think of Nick all the time. She thus relocated to Cumbria, which is roughly 200 miles away from Northampton. Her family members were alarmed by the text she sent them on March 15, 2022. Her relatives phoned the police because they were so concerned. Police discovered Beale gravely hurt in a bath at a Lake District property she was renting while doing a welfare check. Constable Josh Parkin spoke in court about how he first thought she was dead and how ominous music was coming from her cell phone. According to Parkin, "I saw a female laying in the bath, completely naked. It looked like bodily fluids in the bath, leading me to believe the individual was deceased. What I would describe as sinister acoustic music was playing from a mobile phone that was next to her. I immediately requested an ambulance to attend our location. I suggested that we tried to get her out of the bath to perform CPR. She then roused and became somewhat conscious. I pulled quite violently on her ear to try and get a pain response. She moaned and went to turn over in the bath. We sat her up, and that's when she started to become emotional. I discovered a blue notebook that was leather-bound and had a logo of some kind on the front. The fact that the paper and the parting note were identical at the time held significance for me. It was evident from a cursory glance at the notebook that it contained information about her mental health at the time. I remembered that the last page of the book mentioned both vomiting and defecating. At the time, I believed it to be essentially a continuation of the farewell note. Fiona left a second message for the home's owner along with her bank card. The message read, "This is my PIN, don't go into the bathroom." Fiona was taken to the hospital by ambulance, and as the doctors treated her, the cops took a closer look at her notebook. They discovered something evil there. Constable Lawson rejected the notes as ramblings, even though they seemed to describe Beale killing someone. He also stated that he did not think anyone had been killed at that point. The notes seemed to be ramblings, he claimed. In a statement, Constable Roy Williams, a colleague, stated that he too thought the notes were ramblings, but that there were some extremely unsettling elements. I believe these comments to be a delusional fantasy, as Beale appeared to be having a mental health episode. Because of the book's substance, we were unable to overlook the statement. She said her long-term partner was not a very nice man, and that she had killed him. Fiona wrote in her notebook, "Everything changed last year. You be sweet to them, especially your wife. My husband wasn't sweet to me. I suppose I ought to explain what happened to get me to this point. My mental health had been deteriorating. Whenever he was cheating, he would up the ante on belittling, moaning, and criticizing. I have to confess. Okay, here goes. October 2021, he spat on me and threatened me during intimate contact. I thought about leaving, but the things he said and did fueled my dark side. I call her Tulip 22. She's reckless, fearless, and efficient. Ruthless. I started plotting as Tulip 22 after he'd gone to bed. I could no longer sleep in the bed due to my breathing being too loud, or I moved too much, or I was snoring. Another notebook entry mentioned that Nick had been nasty and mean for 17 years, and that she decided she couldn't let him get away with it because of his disgusting behavior on Halloween. Another entry stated, "That night I planned pandemic rules, meant I had a guaranteed 10-day isolation period from positive symptoms. I called the school administration on Monday and said we'd tested positive and had symptoms. He went to work. Tulip 22 smoked and planned. I'd planned it mentally so many times before. I had a bath. I left the water in. I encouraged the bath with the incentive of intimate contact. Afterwards, while he was in the bath, I kept the knife in my dressing gown pocket and then hid it in the drawer next to the bed. I brought a chisel, bin bag, and cable ties up too." She made him put on an eye mask before stabbing him, according to the note. The notes that followed read, "Still, my actions haunt me. I sometimes have to catch myself and remember what I did and then remember my cover story. Neither seemed convincing. I got him to wear an eye mask. It was harder than I thought it would be. Hiding a body was bad. Moving a body is much more difficult than it looks on TV. I am sorry I didn't leave him. I am sorry I let him rip my self-esteem and self-worth apart. I am sorry. I am weak. I am sorry for what I did. Yes, I am alive currently, but it's more like a waiting room. People will blame my mental health. I should have, could have fixed myself. Do I regret what I did? Of course I do. I'm not a monster. It had been building up for so long. The funny thing is that he was such an unlikable person, I only had to send a few texts. No one seemed bothered. I don't think anyone would have looked for him." Beale had written in her journal that Billingham why she stabbed him. Recall that Nicholas Billingham vanished on November 1, 2021, and he only used text messages to communicate with his loved ones after that. The police visited Fiona Beale's residence on Moore Street, where she and Nick resided, the day after they finished reading her notebook. In their hasty inspection, they found nothing out of the ordinary, but when they came back the following day, they discovered a few things, such as a mattress in the cellar that was noticeably covered in blood when it was moved. More evidence was discovered when the police returned to Moore Street on March 19. A body was discovered buried in the backyard by forensic investigators and specialized search teams, which included a cadaver dog. Buried beneath bark, chippings, soil, wooden sheeting, concrete building blocks, bricks and planks, plastic bags, rubble, mortar, polystyrene, laminate flooring, and pieces of fabric and vinyl recovered from a constructed structure concealing the body. Billingham's remains were discovered wrapped in carpet. The eyes were covered with a sleep mask. On the inside, the words, "This is my morning after face," were printed. According to the police spokesperson, he was not given any dignity or opportunity to die because of the way he was wrapped in cables, hose pipes, plastic bags, and construction debris. It displays complete disdain. One day after the body was found, a post-mortem was performed. It has been determined that he was killed by a single stab wound to the right side of his neck, which cut the esophagus and trachea and crossed the right jugular vein. Moderate force would have been needed for this. It is impossible to rule out severe force. Fiona Beale was taken into custody by the authorities on March 22, 2022, and accused with killing Nicholas Billingham. When Nick's family learned of his passing, they were crushed. Fiona's use of Nick's phone to text them and his buddies startled them. One of these texts was shown to reporters by Nick's mother, Yvonne Valentine. "Nick has been taken from us far too early and will always be in our hearts," said Nick's family in a statement. "We've been overwhelmed with offers of kind support and words of comfort from so many beautiful people, and know that he will be sadly missed by all his friends, family, and loved ones. Our heart aches for Nick. He was a gorgeous little boy, and we have so many cherished memories of him growing up, and we're so proud of the man he became." Fiona Beale's co-workers and her students' parents were shocked to hear that the adored teacher had a darker side. "We are particularly mindful of the impact this news will have on the children, and we'll be doing everything we can to support both pupils and staff as we work through this difficult time together. This is an appalling tragedy that will shake our school community to its roots, and it's at times like this that we must rally around each other, support each other, and be kind to each other." The administration of the school where Fiona worked issued a statement saying, "We were shocked and saddened to hear that one of our teaching staff has been charged with a very serious offense and is now remanded in custody." Nick passed away on November 20, 2021, after the police began their investigation. In the days that followed, Fiona made every effort to conceal any evidence of the crime she had orchestrated. Fiona understood that by informing everyone that she had the virus, she would have 10 days to avoid being bothered. She allegedly falsified the test results in order to complete an online application form. Fiona never took the test, according to the evidence. She claimed to be suffering from the crippling effects of the virus following the murder, yet her conduct during those 10 days were incongruous with those symptoms. Using her deceased partner's and subsequently her own Amazon account, she purchased a number of cleaning supplies, including for Venetian blinds, a new mop and bucket, ultra-heavy-duty bin bags, a new mattress, bedding, clothes, wall art, and mirrors. The cleanup began as early as 1:07 a.m. on November 2. She added 3 rolls of duct tape to a Tesco order that included many cleaning supplies later that same day. She bought a stainless steel digging shovel, heavy-duty long gardening gloves, a galvanized incineration bin, garden leaves, and a wood burner at 2:19 p.m. She eventually purchased other items to dispose of the body, as well as numerous items for her personal comfort and delight, including apparel, scented candles, shampoos, chocolates, and soft furnishings. Fiona went shopping nearly 2 weeks after killing Nick. On November 13, she was seen purchasing a variety of goods from supermarket cameras, including building supplies that she would later use to construct a cemetery. The cops revealed the CCTV footage. As I mentioned before, Fiona spent several months texting Nick's friends and family in an attempt to pass for him. She also extended an invitation for Nick's mother to come see her. On December 23, 2021, as her son was buried in the backyard, Ms. Valentine recounted how Beale invited her to her house for a Christmas drink. "You moved the furniture to obscure views to the garden. Why? To stop anyone seeing where you had buried my son. You sat in your front room with me, having a casual chat with me, having a Christmas drink with me, and the whole time you knew that you had killed my son and buried him only feet from where I was sat." Ms. Valentine said in her victim impact statement that Beale continued to go about her personal life and work as usual, showing no signs of depression or trauma. There was evidence to the contrary. She was enjoying what she referred to as a new life in one of her erased files, after killing a partner she no longer liked and likely suspected of having an affair. Fiona Beale first protested her culpability during the trial, but she eventually acknowledged that she killed Nick, saying it was an involuntary crime. The prosecutor, however, thought otherwise. He said during the trial that during their 17-year romance, Nicholas Billingham had cheated on Beale with other women. Despite leaving the defendant a few times, Nicholas Billingham always came back to her, and she welcomed him. He stated, "One of the women he slept with became pregnant and gave birth to his child. Instead of leaving him, she worked out a plan on how and when to kill him, where to conceal his body, how to cover up and explain his disappearance to others, and to explain her own absence from work when she killed him." However, defense lawyer Andrew Wheeler informed the jury in a brief statement read following the prosecution's opening argument that Beale had suffered from mental health issues for years prior to the murder, as a result of Mr. Billingham's coercive actions. Beale's attorney, Wheeler, continued, "We submit that in fact this case is not as straightforward as the prosecution suggests. Miss Beale is 49 years of age. She is a lady of good character, a partner to Nicholas Billingham for some 17 years, a hard-working and thoroughly liked schoolteacher. In essence, a lady about whom you will hear many good things as you listen to the evidence. Wheeler next asked the jury, "How does that person go on to kill? There is no dispute in this case that she unlawfully killed Nicholas Billingham. What this case is really about is her state of mind. You will hear that she has, over the years, struggled with her mental health. As you will hear, the defense lawyer described Nicholas Billingham as psychologically controlling and wearing her down over time. She was worn down till she was practically broken over the years. We surrender to you." Many of the specifics of the actual act itself are difficult for Fiona Beale to remember. The teacher continued to work as usual, even traveling to London with the class, according to the court. However, Beale started messaging the head teacher frequently to claim she was sick a few weeks after her capital visit. When the worried head teacher called Beale's mother after receiving the texts in March, she disclosed that Beale had informed her that she was leaving on a school residential trip. After that, the head teacher reported her missing to the police. She was located by Cumbrian police at a rental address close to Kendal. But Beale informed the officer that she didn't want her family to know her precise whereabouts and that all she needed was some peaceful time. Fiona Beale eventually modified her initial statement and completely accepted her guilt, but not before Beale sent a message to her family saying, "I'm so sorry, I love you all very much." The officer then sent the message to Beale's mother, and 3 days later, they went to the lodge. She then described her personal and professional life to the jury at Northampton Crown Court, claiming that Billingham had made cleaning a major point of contention between them and had thrown a dinner plate against a wall twice. Beale said that she was administered antidepressants while attending college. She claimed that when they first started dating, Billingham, who was working as a builder with his stepfather, was incredibly kind and considerate. Little by little, Billingham had changed. "I remember when we were in a flat," Beale said in the opening statement to the court. "I had left a cloth with cleaner on it, and it stained a worktop. It didn't seem really serious, but then cleaning became a huge issue throughout the years, and rather than laughing things off, I would get told off." Beale also mentioned that everything had to be exactly how her partner wanted it during mealtimes. Beale said, "I couldn't tell you when it started. It just got worse, and it lasted till the end. Items placed in cupboards had to be placed facing outwards. While there were a couple of occasions when he threw a plate of dinner at the wall, I lost a lot of confidence. It started with joking that I wasn't doing something, and then it just crept into being nasty about it." She also revealed that prior to killing Nick, she had threatened to kill him so that he couldn't do to another woman what he did to her. Nick's mother, Yvonne, spoke after the guilty plea, saying it was painful to know that her son's killer offered her a drink as he was buried a few feet away. "How you could hate someone that much to do what she did. I can't believe it," and apparently, his last word was "why," when she stabbed him in the neck. And that wraps up today's chilling story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a new upload. Also, let me know in the comments, what part of this story shocked you the most? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. On August 22, 2016, residents of Podu Caramal, Spain rushed to work and discovered flyers pasted all around town by volunteers. These flyers depicted 18-year-old Diana Maria Kerr Lopez Pinel. This young girl stood about 6 feet tall, had black hair, brown eyes, and was described as being irresistibly attractive by all who saw her picture. As Diana disappeared, she was wearing pink shorts, a t-shirt, white sweatshirt, and black sneakers, clothing she left home wearing, before suddenly disappearing from sight. Since that night, Diana's family, along with volunteers and special services, had tirelessly searched for any sign of Diana, searching every street corner, hoping they may discover some clues which could bring Diana home. Juan Carlos, Diana's father in Madrid, took no time in notifying police and local newspapers of any information or leads about her whereabouts. "If anyone has any piece of information, no matter how small, please reach out. The police need your help," reported Diana's father. Diana's mother, on the verge of depression, beseeched the public to help search for Diana. "We have tried everything possible to locate Diana but still have no answers. Please reach out if any information can help. Even minor details could become crucial in helping find our daughter. De Maria Care Lopez Pinel was born August 12, 1998, in Madrid, to Diana Cristina Lopez Pinel Pinjo and Juan Carlo Care, and had one sister, Valeria. Although their family had been quite prosperous prior to 2013, when their parents' separation caused great distress for both Diana and Valeria, as depression set in and there were often disagreements regarding who should provide care, their mother or their father usually took precedence in providing it. Although Diana lived away from her father during vacations, they would visit Podu Caramol with its population of approximately 10,000 regularly during summer vacations. Diana spent her vacations as usual here during 2016, enjoying both its tranquility and beauty each summer. Sunday, August 21st was set up to be just like any other day. Around 10 Rao, Diana informed her mother that she intended to visit Val Inkland Park, not far from their cottage where they were staying, and meet up with her friends for fun on account of Feast of Virgin Carmen. Diana often made this trek there herself, so there was nothing unusual or unreasonable about it for Diana's mother, so she gave Diana permission. Again, Diana spent that evening joyfully among her friends. 4 hours later, Diana bid farewell and headed home, unaware that this would be their final encounter. On her journey home, she met Paso de Ariel nearby a pizzeria, where Diana frequently spent her time. They exchanged goodbyes at around 2:30 a.m. Paso de Ariel would become Diana's last person seen that dark night. Maria Care Lopez. Pinel discovered something was amiss with Diana early in the morning of August 22, 2016. At 8:30, she realized something wasn't right with her daughter. She hadn't returned from a party, and her cell phone was off or unreachable, raising suspicion among Maria Care. So quickly after realizing what had occurred, she called police to report Diana missing immediately. According to information provided by her mother, it could be concluded that Diana Maria Care Lopez Pinel did not suffer from any serious emotional or mental health issues. Although she experienced difficulties due to her parents' divorce, Diana's absence was unusually long-lasting, and this sparked serious concerns among police investigators, who began unraveling what had transpired leading up to her disappearance and must uncover why Diana vanished without trace. According to reports, Diana sent her last messages via WhatsApp to a friend from Madrid and described a specific individual who was stalking and shouting strange phrases that scared the girl. These were Diana's last contact with the outside world, as she no longer responded, but her messages were still read by someone. The following day, police began retracing Diana's route back home. There, along the roadside, they discovered a black hairband similar to what Diana was wearing that evening. Unfortunately, it was all they found there, and no further proof existed for investigators to consider. Diana was unable to provide any useful information, and there were no CCTV cameras covering the final leg of her journey. The street in which Diana made her last stop was poorly lit and sparsely populated, featuring only garages and an outmoded Boomerang nightclub. Along this road were some witnesses claiming they saw Diana get out of a car containing 3 guys before moving onto another one that took her away from the port. These testimonies, however, could not be verified. Investigators considered 2 main versions of what had happened. The first suggested Diana may have been taken by someone she may know, while a second theory linked Diana's disappearance with possible attacks by maniacs. Diana's mother suggested an additional theory suggesting her daughter could have been taken away on a boat. Diana's friend and ex-partner reported meeting someone from Morocco who helped them buy hashish together. But this information only complicated their investigation further. One key point was the news report in the media about the discovery of Diana's clothing from that evening. However, her mother denied this information, stating no clothes had been found and her credit card and identification had been left in the house, thus demonstrating that Diana could not simply disappear on her own free will. All these circumstances further pointed toward this being not just random events or accidents, but something more sinister taking place behind these circumstances. However, the case still remained mysterious and could not be solved. Shortly after Diana disappeared, Press reports detailed a recent dispute between Diana and her mother, at which point the media speculated that Diana may have experienced a nervous breakdown necessitating medical attention, as had occurred with Valeria, her younger sister. On September 1st, to avoid more litigation and conflict, custody rights of Diana's younger sister were transferred from mother to father as an attempt to avert further strife within the local community. With Diana gone, tension began mounting as her father left town with their daughter, and whispered whispers began that their family were hiding something important from public scrutiny. According to Diana's friends, running away was not unusual in Diana and Valeria's household. Indeed, quarrels between mother and daughters were commonplace. With this information available to the public, one question immediately arose: why was Diana so worried when she did not return when running away was so common among the sisters? On August 31st, Diana's parents failed to appear for an expected press interview regarding the investigation into Diana's disappearance and reported more details of it to El Mundo newspaper on September 11th. Instead, their lawyer explained they were emotionally distraught at the possibility that their daughter may never come home again. On this same date, El Mundo published an article providing insights into other aspects of family life within Diana's household. Information concerning Diana's April disappearance reportedly contradicted her mother's statements that she did not suffer from mental problems, as evidenced by information regarding her 3-day absence and failure by her mother to contact authorities about it. It further reported that when Diana left home for 3 days without telling anyone or turning off her phone when upset or disgruntled by something her mother did or said, the girl turned off her phone to avoid further conflict with her and said that she no longer wanted to live with her. Letters written between Diana and Valeria also surfaced in the press, showing their severity of emotional issues. Valeria had even been hospitalized multiple times over the course of a year due to an overdose of prescription medications. At this point, given no progress with Diana Care's disappearance investigation, prosecutors launched another probe focusing on Valeria Lopez Panel family's youngest daughter Valeria's abuse by the Lopez Panel family. Meanwhile, Diana Care's disappearance investigation continued apace, with forensic experts seizing several items associated with Diana such as toothbrushes, combs, personal computers, diary entries, and prescription drugs belonging to Diana from her roommates and housemates. Investigators conducted a detailed examination of Diana's belongings. Investigators then began questioning her acquaintances, including a young Moroccan man whom Diana had had an encounter. Unfortunately, none of these measures brought any results and further police searches remained fruitless. Although police conducted extensive searches near where Diana disappeared in mountains, forests, rivers, lakes near Tarragona, area 13 miles from where family was staying. 72 days after Diana K's disappearance, her case remained an enigma. Investigators' leads had yet to be confirmed, and they only discovered an item matching Diana's description as being part of their investigation. Her hairband and an identical cell pony that her father confirmed belonged to his daughter. 2 months after Diana had vanished, her Facebook profile suddenly reappeared online, and friends and relatives immediately informed the police and provided screenshots. Friends noted that reset password function had been utilized to avoid entering login details for her profile. Either Diana had forgotten her password, or someone was trying to gain entry to it through hacking attempts. Diana's phone was an integral piece in the case, yet it failed to shed light on her mysterious disappearance. On November 10, 2016, however, the driver of the very car where Diana had last been seen was finally identified. This individual had previously been detained on charges of human trafficking. Details about his involvement in Diana's disappearance had previously been kept hidden so as not to disrupt investigations. His wife claimed he was with her on that night, eliminating him as a potential suspect. However, on December 25, 2017, an incident took place that became pivotal to the investigation. One of the girls was attacked by a man demanding her phone and threatening her with a weapon. Screams for help came from nearby, and 2 passers-by immediately intervened to save the girl from an attempt by an individual to pull her into their car. The shocked victim immediately reported their experience to the police, providing details about both his attacker and license plate number. Within 24 hours, police arrested 41-year-old Jose Enrique Abane, known by many as Elo. As soon as police learned more, they soon recognized him as one of 3 drivers detained for suspected kidnapping back in 2016, but later released because they believed their wife's alibi. Police interrogated Jose Enrique and his wife again. Following this interview, his wife confessed to having previously lied, and on the night Diana vanished, Jose wasn't back home until 4 a.m. He eventually admitted he accidentally hit Diana on the road, was afraid to report it, so decided to dispose of the body himself, instead of going through with his plans of reporting her murder. However, later changed his version and confessed he kidnapped and killed Diana instead. This devastating revelation shed light on new details to the case and confirmed Diana K. Lopez Pinel's disappearance as being due to violent crime. Her disappearance caused incredible heartache for both her loved ones and all of those following it, with nearly 500 days of investigation and media speculation only compounding their suffering. Assaulting Diana's parents only served to hinder and confuse the investigation. But, with persistent investigation and testimony from another victim, investigators were eventually able to collect all necessary evidence and track down Diana's perpetrator. Her loved ones will remember Diana as an outgoing young woman who unfortunately fell prey to an extreme criminal. Her story serves as a reminder that it's essential we stick together during times of turmoil, when fighting crime to end impunity and ensure safety for all citizens. Unfortunately, Diana's perpetrator did not confess right away as to where they had hidden her body. Eventually, her family and friends managed to say their final farewells and give her a proper burial in January 2018. Jose was eventually sentenced to life with parole available after serving 35 years. Share your opinion with us in the comments and subscribe to the channel for more. Hey guys, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. At this point, a single horrifying discovery validated the police officer's worst fears. A psychotic murderer was at large. The murderer believed he had escaped, but he was unaware that he had been captured on camera. The police discovered a lead that would turn the case around just when it appeared to be unsolvable. But the first chapter of his dark tale exposed a horror so unthinkable that it rocked even the most infamous offenders to their foundation. On April 7, 2016, at 7:36 p.m., a homeless woman in Pasco County, Florida, dialed 911. She had discovered something she would never forget while searching for cans. The suspected area was in the vicinity of Newport Richey's Woodlands. Matthew Adamo, the Pasco County Sheriff, was scheduled to look into the report. Detectives initially thought it was a homeless altercation gone wrong, but they quickly discovered they were dealing with something far more sinister. The caller, who was questioned by detectives, stated that a man's headless body was found next to a shopping center and a community of mobile homes. She immediately fled again, preventing the scene from becoming contaminated. The investigative team split up into 2 groups after verifying that the body was indeed in the wooded area. One was to find evidence, and the other was to secure the body. They hoped to find something gruesome that might have been captured on camera at the Metro PCS store, which was fortunately the closest location. The majority of the CCTV footage had been deleted when the staff member led them to the room where it was being recorded. Everything on the camera had been deleted because the building had just been purchased by new owners on Friday. Meanwhile, another group of police officers cleared the path to the body and secured the area. Finding the victim and making preliminary inferences were their top priorities. The investigators were on the verge of discovering something that would completely change the course of their investigation. They had an idea of who the deceased might have been as soon as they discovered the body belonged to a woman. Just over a mile from the forested area, in October 2015, 21-year-old Brooklyn Peck was reported missing. Her case was declared unsolved by the police following a protracted investigation. The hope of finding Brooklyn safe and sound had faded along with the exhaustion of the search for her. However, after 6 traumatic months, Brooklyn's family once again hoped to find some sort of closure when the recently discovered body was reported on the news. However, the coroner's report, which would be obtained once forensics had safely removed the body and performed tests, was necessary to confirm whether it was Brooke Lynn. However, all of that had to wait until the crime scene was thoroughly examined, and the body's ambiguous location was making things more difficult. They were eventually able to examine the body up close at approximately 9:05 p.m. The officers had no idea that they were going to come across one of the most devastating discoveries of their lives. Since she was still wearing jewelry, the investigators concluded that it wasn't a robbery gone wrong. Her face had been so severely mutilated that it was unrecognizable, and her clothing was pulled over it. Her torn stockings further raised suspicions among the police that this crime scene was more than a landfill. This was the precise location where the victim had died. They had brought her here and killed her. It was extremely unsettling to consider that another person would do this to someone and abandon them without a sense of identity, purpose, or concern. They were certain that the investigation would not be simple. The victim had endured the most terrible final moments, whether or not it was Brooke Lynn. In actuality, the detectives had never seen a more heinous case of sexual assault. The medical examiner's office eventually informed them that blunt force trauma to the head was the cause of death. The investigators were aware that they had seen the aftermath of a deranged, unsettling fantasy. The real, unsettling tale would begin to take shape here. Their best guess for the Jane Doe's identity was Brooke Lynn Peck. The detectives immersed themselves in Brooke Lynn's case file while the body was prepared for forensic examination. They discovered something grim there. They found a physical characteristic that made it impossible for the body to be Brooke Lynn, even before the forensic report disproved the link between the body and Brooke Lynn. This was just one of the many twists that made this case feel like a movie. The tip of the recovered body's left pointer finger was still present, but Brooke Lynn's was missing. They now understood that Brooke Lynn Peck was not the deceased. They felt a wide range of emotions upon learning that this was not Brooke Lynn. They had been hoping for some closure, so they went from being relieved and happy that it wasn't her to feeling sad that it wasn't her. The effort to positively identify Jane Doe was a complete failure. Searching through the month's missing persons reports until they discovered a good match was the next difficult task. In an effort to identify the woman, and if at all possible, provide closure to yet another family in need of answers, they launched a thorough search through recent missing persons reports. After searching through the documents, they eventually discovered a match, a woman who had been reported missing just a few weeks earlier and who looked remarkably similar to the body they had found. The detectives realized they were starting a completely new investigation after making this identification. Judith Terrianos, age 52, was the owner of the body. The family of this grandmother, who had been missing for more than a month, was in the same state of desperation as Brooke Lynn's. They were aware that it would take a careful balancing act between forensic accuracy and unwavering resolve, and maybe a little bit of luck, to find out what had happened to this woman. Their attention now turned to discovering the truth about Judith's terrible fate, even though Brooke Lynn's case was still pending. Newport Richey was not Judith's home. She was only a guest. She had gone there to visit a friend who was fighting cancer with another friend. Unfortunately, she never came home. Born in September 1963, Judith Terrianos was originally from Maine. When she was younger, she frequently took family vacations to Greece because she loved to travel. The 52-year-old who had volunteered at a bookstore and worked at a nursing home in the past was said to be a kind and compassionate individual. In February 2016, the mother of three had gone to Florida to take care of a sick friend. By obtaining a fingerprint from the deceased, the medical examiner's office was able to identify the person as Judith Terrianos. The CCTV footage collected from the area gave detectives a vital lead when they eventually identified Judith, which gave the case new life. The detectives divided into groups. A couple of detectives went to a convenience store to get video, and a few others went to find her last known location. They focused on a convenience store and a number of nearby companies. She was seen buying alcohol at a nearby convenience store which she was known to frequent in the first surveillance footage they found. In the surveillance footage, they saw Judith and another individual buying her items at the time. She was seen in the video purchasing alcohol at a nearby convenience store with an unnamed man. That left the police with a suspect to pursue, one who might have the answers to this puzzling riddle. They were unsure whether the man was the cause of Judith's death or if he was just another acquaintance when they found the surveillance footage of her in the convenience store with him. He might be able to help them with the investigation. Since he was the last person seen with Judith, identifying him became the top priority. He wasn't registered, regrettably, because the DNA evidence taken from the crime scene didn't match anything in the database. With only a description and a picture of the man, the detectives had no choice but to search the neighborhood. In the hopes that someone would recognize their main suspect, they went back to the trailer park and knocked on as many doors as they could. All of them provided hazy descriptions, suggesting that they were either unaware of what had occurred or that they were unwilling to speak with the police. They came closest to a man named Grizzly, who possessed both evidence and information. He provided them with concrete proof and information that went beyond mere rumors. He told the police that although he didn't know the man well, he had provided him with a place to stay for a few days. Additionally, he told the detectives that the man had forgotten his bag. Because it directly connected the suspect's clothing to the scene, Grizzly's disclosure was a significant turning point in the case. But that was where Grizzly's knowledge abruptly stopped. He said that aside from the fact that the suspect appeared nervous, bordering on paranoid, and eager to get out of town, he didn't know much about him. Grizzly claims that although the man had discussed purchasing a one-way ticket to Chicago, he had not provided any personal information, not even his name. An unexpected lead was about to be given to detectives, and it developed in a way that added to the mystery's unnerving aspects. The police suspected that there might be a lead so significant that it would completely blow the case apart. They promptly gave him the assurance that anything he revealed would be treated with the highest confidentiality and protection, because they were at a pivotal point in their investigation. Stefan was the first to speak. Stefan knew the mystery man as well as Judith. His name, Stefan said, was Timothy. Timothy had mentioned his interest in Judy while they were together at a convenience store. The investigators had never been closer to the truth, thanks to Grizzly's evidence linking the mystery man to the scene, and Stefan's now implied willingness to divulge something significant. Something Stefan was about to reveal would finally solve the mystery once and for all. Even though the mystery man had finally been identified, Stefan had more in store for us. Police had found a bottle of rubbing alcohol at the scene. They were unaware of its significance at the time. They now knew that in an effort to hide his identity by destroying the DNA, he had poured rubbing alcohol on her body. The man was recognized by Stefan as Timothy Johnson. After expressing interest in Judith, Timothy's feelings would take a deadly turn in a matter of hours. The detectives were on the verge of making a discovery that would completely change the course of events. For them, it marked a significant turning point. After investigating Timothy Johnson's background, detectives discovered that he had been arrested 4 times in Florida for domestic abuse, aggravated battery, and twice for not showing up for court. Curiously, 3 weeks prior to the discovery of Judith's body, one of those arrests for aggravated assault occurred. He broke into a woman's house late at night after drinking too much. More significantly, though, this indicated that he was already under police arrest. Timothy Johnson lacked any genuine regret for his crimes and was incredibly heartless. With CCTV footage, witness statements, and evidence that placed him close to the crime scene, the detectives were now prepared to address the most pressing issue. Just the video evidence was important. Witnesses also recalled Timothy's unpredictable behavior and interactions with Judith in the days preceding her death, and it caught him close to the crime scene around the time of Judith's murder. As the pieces came together, the detectives were ready to construct a strong case because they knew that Timothy's violent past gave the current charges context and substance. When the detectives went to the prison to question the cold-blooded killer, the police thought they had finally located him, but they had no idea that this was only the beginning. Detectives discovered as they dug deeper that they were looking into a pattern of increasing violence rather than just one murder. Johnson's history of arrests suggested that he was used to getting away with grave consequences for his behavior. In June 2015, Timothy entered a no-contest plea for misdemeanor battery, adding to his criminal history. In December 2015, he was also accused of resisting a police officer and violating his probation. Timothy was arrested in January 2016 for using a knife to break into the home of his former roommate. The ex-roommate reportedly claimed that he had previously threatened to break up with her. Timothy, however, was set free in February 2016. Since he had been incarcerated since March 23, 2016, for a probation violation, the authorities didn't have to search far for him once Judith was located. He reportedly acknowledged having consensual sex with Judith, but withheld further details. However, other prisoners came forward with information stating that Timothy had described what had happened and confessed to killing Judith. They anticipated a confession, but they were taken by surprise. He didn't confess to his crimes until he was officially booked, charged with first-degree murder, and put inside the prison walls, but not to the investigators. He conversed with another prisoner instead. He smashed her face in and suffocated her to death, then went to a place that would make anyone's skin crawl. Timothy was merely idly sitting there. He was not in a panic. He wasn't going crazy. He appeared to have experienced nothing at all. Timothy used his victim's pilfered credit card to eat some waffles. Those who dared to imagine what he would do next would never be able to forget it. Timothy Johnson received a life sentence. By commemorating Judith Therianos, we pay tribute to her life and promote a society in which each person is treated with respect and dignity, preventing further victims of needless violence. Nothing really surprises the police, who always see the worst in people. The police were affected by this, even though it was sickening and unsettling. Some people experienced nightmares, not so much because of him, as because of how awful her final moments were. Investigators and the general public were left wondering, was he struggling with guilt, or was there a darker side to his selective silence? This confession's timing and nature sparked numerous debates. Timothy was ultimately convicted of first-degree murder and given a life sentence in October 2017. For the January 2016 incident, he was also found guilty on 2 counts of aggravated assault and sentenced to 5 years in prison each. According to prison records, Timothy is still a prisoner at the Union Correctional Institution in Rayford, Florida. And that wraps up today's chilling story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a new upload. Also, let me know in the comments, what part of this story shocked you the most? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. When we think about what makes a place great to live, we often think about how safe it is, how nice the neighborhood is, and how friendly the people who live there are. One country meets all of the requirements. Iceland is an island nation off the east coast of Greenland that has been voted one of the best places to live in the world over and over again. Just over 340,000 people live there, making it one of the world's smallest cities. But its stunning natural beauty makes up for it in a big way. People come from all over the world to see the natural springs and rolling hills. People from all over the world come to this small country to see its many attractions, such as its beautiful architecture and the aurora borealis. Because Iceland has harsh winters, there isn't always a lot of sunlight, but that just adds to the mystery of the place, which is so different from what most of us know and understand. One of the most appealing things about Iceland is the friendliness, openness, and kindness of its people. Due to the tough terrain and harsh winters, people rely on each other, value community, and take care of their neighbors. There are strong social attitudes against crime. They have no army, and their police officers do not carry guns. People often leave their doors unlocked and get lifts with strangers. The peace and quiet of Iceland would be broken one Friday night in 2017 by a brutal murder that seemed to have no reason. The country would be left in shock. We are going to talk about Birna Briansdóttir. Birna Briansdóttir lived in the southeast of Reykjavik. While her parents were no longer together, they remained on friendly terms, and she was the center of their world. She was bright and spirited, with her fiery personality reflected in her striking auburn hair. She was incredibly witty with a sharp sense of humor, which made her popular among her friends. She was carefree and whimsical, but always responsible, with this maturity reflected in her relationship with her family and her mature attitude toward work. Music was a big passion, and Birna wasn't picky. She would listen to anything from rap to pop and from rock to folk. It was this openness and free spirit that made so many people love her. Birna had a close group of friends and liked going out at night in Reykjavik. She worked in the fashion section of a busy department store. To relax, she would get drinks at the local bar after work and then go out to really let her hair down. For sure, this is what Berna did that night, January 13th, 2017. After closing the shop, she got drinks, played a few rounds of cards, and then went to the center of the capital to laugh, drink, and dance all night. They went to Horror, a place where new bands would play, and Berna was soon dancing on the stage. While her friends were ready to leave by 2 a.m., Berna wasn't. She wanted to keep having fun. She left the club just before 5 a.m. and walked out into the 9-degree weather. She then went to get falafel, and then walked back to her house. A woman walking alone in Reykjavik was not rare. People trusted each other and looked out for each other. Due to her intoxication, she dropped coins and stumbled into a stranger on the side of the road. As she carried on walking, she turned a corner and walked down a narrow lane towards the sea. Then she vanished. Because she was known for being on time when she didn't show up for work, people were worried right away. Maria, a school friend who worked with Berna, was upset right away that she wasn't there. It got worse when she tried to call her cell phone. It wouldn't work, and Berna never turned off her phone. People thought she had just gone back to her dad's house to sleep off her hangover. Her friends who had been out with her that night also thought this, but she wasn't there. Scylla, Berna's mother, was called because she was also worried about where her daughter was. She knew Berna and knew that this wasn't like her at all. Without waiting, her family called the police right away to say she wasn't there. Realizing the power of social media, Scylla posted to her Facebook page, "Dear friends, it's not like her that we can't reach her. Please share and let's find her, Scylla." Iceland is a small community, and before long, Scylla's desperate pleas on Facebook were being shared, and news of Berna's disappearance began to circulate. The stress and worry of having a child go missing are unimaginable. Her parents couldn't sleep, and they persistently made calls to all the emergency services, desperately seeking any new information on Berna's whereabouts. The following day, the police were able to trace her last known mobile interaction before it went dead or was turned off. Just before 6 a.m., her phone pinged off a mobile tower in a port town, Hafnarfjordur, 6 miles outside of the capital. Right away, Scylla got in her car and drove there, calling out to her daughter and looking around the area. A group of family and friends worked with her to get Berna back home alive. Soon, 36 hours had passed since Berna had disappeared into the night in Reykjavik. Her friends and family were sure that something bad had happened to her. She was a trustworthy young woman, and this was not like her at all. Not much was known to the police, though. There was no proof of a murder or kidnapping, so they couldn't do much. As word of her disappearance spread, it quickly made the front page of every newspaper. Every newscaster in Iceland talked about Berna all the time. Her face was on every newspaper page. In the early hours of Sunday morning, her parents went to the police and begged them to search for her. They said she would not have gone off on her own accord, much less not told anyone where she was going. She had no money troubles or relationship problems. Everyone who knew Berna adored her. A case as baffling and unusual as this required Iceland's best detectives, one of which was Grim Or Grimson. He had 30 years of investigative experience. He was even part of a special team who spent more than 5 years building a case against those whose misconduct and corruption contributed to the financial crash of 2009. After this, he returned to his roots as a police officer, saying he missed the fast-paced work. Like his colleagues, he too wasn't initially that concerned about Berna. There were many other factors that he had to consider. People do go missing in Iceland. Anything from mental health problems to simply staying at a friend's house and not telling people. Most missing people would eventually turn up. A lot of CCTV is set up in capital cities around the world, but Reykjavik isn't like most of them. The people of Iceland don't like being watched, and since crime isn't common, the people tend to police themselves. They watch out for each other and strangers, but someone saw her the night she went missing. CCTV showed her leaving the club with her coins in the ground and walking into a stranger. When Grimson checked the next camera less than a block away, she was gone. There were 2 options. Either she had gone down the side road off the corner or got into a car. Grimson paid close attention to the little things, and he was sure that the broken CCTV footage held a clue that would lead them to Berna. The red Kia Rio he saw was going the other way on the other side of the road from Berna. A short time after Berna had been seen at the Lebowski bar, he saw it drive by. The police had to follow up on this lead. What was next? They couldn't see the license plate, who was driving, or how many people were in the car. There were more than 100 of those kinds of cars in Iceland. This didn't make her parents feel better about their worries. Scylla was incandescent when they explained the quality of the tape was too poor to extract any more details from. Scylla said, "Can't you find it like in the movies?" Grimson replied, "It doesn't work like that." The police knew that even though they didn't have enough CCTV, the people in the area had hope. They asked the people of Iceland to help them. At a rare press conference, Grimson and Berna's upset family spoke in front of the cameras and begged Iceland to help them find her. In front of the media, Scylla showed what kind of person her daughter was by saying that she was very smart, bilingual, loved other cultures, and loved to travel. The police's hunch at the press conference would lead to a breakthrough. It proved right, and before long, they had their first lead. A pair of brothers decided to search Hafnarfjörður, where her phone had pinged off the tower, and when there, they headed towards the harbor. After searching in a fenced-off area, they found a pair of boots, black Doc Martens, identical to the pair that Berna had last been seen wearing. Using the power of social media, they posted a picture of them to Facebook, and before long, the officers arrived. They confirmed the shoes were Berna's. The police finally felt like they were making progress. Grimson told the police to carefully look through the CCTV footage, and soon they saw a picture they knew. At 6 a.m. on the morning Berna went missing, a red Kia Rio pulled into the harbor. A drunk man got out of the car and stumbled toward a fishing trawler that had already been docked. After that, the car drove off. Finally, they were able to read the license plate. The car had been rented by Thomas Müller Olsen, a 25-year-old fisherman from Greenland. A family had since rented the car and said there was a smell of chemicals coming from the back. After taking the car away, police were determined to find any sign of Berna. Eventually, they found a clue. There were blood spots in the back seat. So that they could find out if it was Berna, samples were quickly taken and sent to Sweden to be analyzed. For Grimson and his team, it was now a race against time. They needed to find the trawler and their only suspects, Thomas Müller Olsen and Nikolai Olsen. Thomas and Nikolai weren't related, but were crewmates on the trawler. Thomas was considered easygoing, approachable, and generally likable while on board. His phone pinged, and Thomas went pale. It was a news article saying that the ship he was on was linked to the disappearance of Berna. A journalist had contacted a Facebook group used by the men on board and asked who had rented the car and who was seen on the CCTV. Thomas was visibly shaken. His captain assured him if he was innocent, he would be fine. There was a huge challenge for Grimson and his team. The longer his suspects were on that boat, the longer they had to make up stories and get rid of anything that could be used against them. Not to worry, the ship's captain already had a plan. He read about the connection between the ship and Berna, so he turned the ship around and went back to Iceland. He and his top officers agreed that they would say the engine problems made them have to turn around, and the suspects couldn't read anything about the case because the Wi-Fi was turned off. In order to catch them off guard, the police sent members of their elite counter-terrorism squad, also known as the Viking Squad, to board the ship as soon as it arrived back in Iceland. Finally, the police were able to catch their two suspects after dropping officers off from a helicopter on the ship. The reaction of the public to the case was massive, and the whole country was waiting on tenterhooks for any news of what had happened to Berna. The case seemed to take over all aspects of Icelandic life. Although their intentions were good, online sleuths only added to the confusion, and it became hard to distinguish rumor from fact. Stories ranged from a body being found in a lake to Berna and other women being found alive on the trawler, swirled around social media. Grimson stayed calm and asked everyone else to do the same. People who meant well, though, were not helping the search for Berna. Around 11 p.m. on Wednesday, the ship came back into port, and the two suspects were handcuffed and brought back to Iceland. Then the terrible news came out. Birna's blood was found in the rental car. It didn't take the police long to question the two men. Nikolaj and Thomas were sure they hadn't hurt Birna, and they both told the same story about what happened that terrible night. They had split up and gone to different bars to drink before getting back together as the night was coming to a close. Nikolaj was already very drunk, so it was hard for him to remember what they said. He had no idea who they were, but they said they had picked up two girls on the street, and one of them was Birna. Thomas said he left Nikolaj at the ship and then drove off. Then he went to the back with the two girls and let them kiss. After an hour, he dropped them off. The police were inclined to believe Nikolaj. He had been seen walking away and was clearly in no fit state to do anything. However, when it came to Thomas, they had a bad feeling, and the evidence against him was stacking up. He was examined by a doctor who determined that the wounds on his chest were signs of a struggle or fight. When searching the ship, the police found a driver's license in the bin. It belonged to Birna. They also found drugs with a street value of nearly £1.5 million. Thomas claimed to have slept in the car, but the police checked the odometer, which showed that the car had been taken for a long drive. They also had CCTV on his person, because he was seen buying plastic bags and cleaning fluid before cleaning the inside of the car. The police didn't believe his story that he was sick and just trying to clean the car because they knew the blood spots were Birna's. The back of the car lit up when they used luminol to bring out any blood that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. This showed that it was completely covered in blood. 4 days after she vanished, Iceland launched the biggest search in its history. The search and rescue project manager said, "Today, she is our sister, our daughter." And that became the mantra. We don't live in a society where we tolerate a 20-year-old woman being abducted in the night. It wouldn't be long before the police found what they were looking for. A Coast Guard helicopter noticed something floating in the water near a local lighthouse, and it was a body. They had found Birna. When this news came out, Iceland went into mourning, and people were shocked and couldn't believe what they were hearing. Things like this only happened in movies and other places. In Iceland, they didn't happen. People in Greenland were shocked and saddened along with their Nordic neighbors. The main street in Reykjavik, where Birna had gone, was turned into a shrine with candles lit up. The funeral for Birna took place at the Hallgrímskirkja, which is the country's largest church. Over 2,000 people, including the president and prime minister, were there. People needed answers from the police, and they had to give them. First, they had to figure out what killed the person. Birna had been found naked, but they could find no evidence of a sexual assault. The examiner found that she had suffered blunt force trauma to the head and had been strangled as well. However, the official cause of death was ruled as drowning. She had survived the initial attack and was alive when she was put into the water. Even though Grimson and his team looked at all the evidence, they couldn't find any link between Nikolaj's death and the murder of Birna. They didn't think he had anything to do with it. He was freed after 2 weeks in jail and hours of questioning. They looked back at Thomas again. His story hadn't changed, and he wasn't going to change it either. During 9 interviews with the police, he insisted that he was not guilty. As more evidence came in, the police still couldn't figure out why Thomas would kill Birna, even though they had a crime scene and a suspect. His DNA was found on a lace of Birna's Doc Martens, and his fingerprints were on her old driver's license from March 30th, 2017. Breaking news alerts were spreading all over Iceland. The police had charged Thomas Müller Olsen with drug possession and murder. Media interest in the story reached a fever pitch as his trial began in August of that year. It was during his trial that he sensationally changed his story. He said that there were not 2 girls, only one, Birna. He claimed that he had left the car to go to the bathroom, and Nikolaj had driven off with Birna in the back seat. When he returned, she wasn't with him, shocking the court. He was now trying to pin the murder on his crewmate, admitting to the drug possession, but denying murder. At the end of September, the 3 judges found him guilty on all charges. He was then taken to start his 19-year prison sentence. When Thomas Müller Olsen tried to appeal his conviction, the High Court upheld it. The next year, the High Court refused to look at another appeal. There was a lot of shock in Iceland when Birna Brjánsdóttir was killed. This case will be remembered. It changed us a bit. Our feeling of safety, the chaplain who led Birna's funeral said. More CCTV was put up around Reykjavik, and women became more cautious around strangers. Even though Grimson had been a police officer for 30 years, this was his first murder case. People in Iceland saw him as a hero because he was calm and coordinated. He is now proud to work for his country at the European Union's agency in The Hague for law enforcement cooperation. Even though Birna Brjánsdóttir's murder was a terrible event, her memory is still alive, and the people of Iceland are determined that she will never be forgotten. Share your opinion with us in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more. Hey guys, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. Ashley Parlier, a 21-year-old from Battle Creek, Michigan, argued with her parents on June 12, 2005, and then fled the house. Everyone, including relatives and friends, was suspected for years after she vanished without a trace and was never seen again. For more than 10 years, the case produced no results. The police were looking for answers about the Parlier family for 18 years until they finally found them. Where has Ashley Parlier disappeared to? Was there a possibility of foul play? Today we're examining Ashley Parlier's case, which lasted until 2023 and involved 18 years of age. Without further ado, let's begin the narrative. In addition to welcoming neighborhoods and amiable communities, Battle Creek, a tiny city in southwest Michigan, offers its residents amazing growth prospects and a thriving business. Located between two states and a major highway, Battle Creek is known as the cradle of the cereal industry and attracts a lot of tourists because of its picturesque downtown. Battle Creek is a bustling neighborhood with a distinct suburban vibe. One of the greatest areas in Michigan to raise a family is Battle Creek, which is well known for its recreational possibilities and natural beauty. In 2005, a 21-year-old from the same vibrant and welcoming town sadly vanished without a trace. Russell and Sherry Parlier welcomed a baby girl, whom they named Ashley, as their second child on October 16, 1983. Ashley has been quiet and reserved since she was a young child. She was also quite naive. She didn't make many friends as she grew older. Nicole Campen, Ashley's older sister, recalls how trusting her sister was. She claimed that one of the most memorable things about her was how trusting she was and how she simply saw the best in everyone. It was excellent that she wanted people to be what she believed the world should be. Ashley had gorgeous brown hair and eyes, and her crooked-toothed smile was quite lovely. Ashley also worked at the level of an adolescent between the ages of 12 and 14 due to a little mental impairment. She was able to live life to the fullest in spite of her troubles. She obtained employment at the closest Taco Bell store, located on the 800 block of Northeast Capitol Avenue, after graduating from Battle Creek Central High School. She had been accumulating money from her earnings at Taco Bell in order to get her own vehicle. Unfortunately, disaster was just around the corner for Ashley, a young woman who wished for a happy world. She was sweet and loving, yet the world did not treat her well. Ashley Parlier, 21, was about 5 feet 9 inches tall and had a slender frame. She was only 100 pounds. Her parents were therefore quite concerned on June 12, 2005, when they discovered that she seemed to have a bulge. Ashley was too pure, after all, both mentally and naturally. If she chose to carry the baby, they wanted her to see a doctor and receive prenatal care since they were worried about her health. Ashley left the house in a rage after a heated argument with her parents about the whole thing. Without a car, driver's license, cell phone, or credit card, she left her home in the Bedford Township community of Urbandale. She did, however, have some cash on hand, roughly $700.00. Ashley never came home, despite the family's desire to give her the time she needed to calm down. The Parlier family felt something was wrong and were anxious as the minutes stretched into hours, and then into days. At first, they had assumed Ashley would stay at one of her friends' homes for a few days, cool off, and then come back to them. However, they were forced to report her missing to the police after she hadn't returned after many days, and they couldn't contact her. The police made Ashley Parlier's photo and physical description public in the hopes that it would help them find any leads, because they had little evidence to work with and no leads to pursue. They disclosed information about her build, weight, and physical characteristics, as well as the clothing she was wearing at the time of her disappearance. She was last saw wearing blue trousers, brown leather sandals, and a checkered top. Soon after, the police received a lot of tips regarding sightings, particularly in the vicinity of Houghton Lake. There was a sigh of relief from the family. In the event that she was discovered, they planned to convince Ashley to return home. However, the Parlier family soon received grim news from the police. None of the sightings could be verified and were all bogus. Ashley was therefore not yet prepared to return home, wherever she was. As the investigation progressed to the second level, Ashley's parents, Cherie and Russell, who had delayed making a complaint, were the object of the officers' first suspicion. While Ashley's mother, Cherie, refused to take the polygraph, her father consented to do so and was exonerated. It's crucial to note that Cherie had already begun exhibiting symptoms of Huntington's disease, which was correctly identified a few years later. Nicole, Ashley's sister, explained that since Ashley had never done anything like that, not returning home for this long was undoubtedly uncommon behavior. However, the family had assumed that she was likely venting at a friend's house because they had a rather heated disagreement before she left. They had thought they would be able to resolve the issue if she returned home by the weekend. The police were clearly concerned because, according to Nicole, her parents were the last two people to see her at that time. She continued, "Again, we are a small-town Michigan family. We never thought that this would be a 16-year ordeal of trying to figure out where a daughter and sister is." In the months prior to her disappearance, the police also attempted to look for her then-estranged partner. At the time of the interrogation, Ashley's family thought she was carrying his child, even though they had split up. Another girlfriend of his was pregnant as well. Although the cops were unable to locate any evidence against him, he was not ruled out as a suspect. Ashley's close friends and family members were again questioned, but once more no information was discovered. But there was another angle. The officers discovered that Ashley might have had suicidal thoughts. The police had a suspicion that they would be able to locate the body if she had committed suicide. Thus, the police conducted a thorough search for her body. There was nothing substantial to find. They then speculated that Ashley might have been robbed, but her social security number remained unchanged during her absence. The police were prepared to deliver more unfavorable news to the Parlier family by this point. They told her relatives that Ashley was probably already dead and that they suspected foul play. Additionally, they promised the family that they would not give up on her. Although they conducted a thorough search for Ashley Parlier, the case ultimately came to nothing. Ashley's case was handled by a number of Battle Creek Police Department personnel throughout the course of the following 18 years. The department as a whole was baffled by her disappearance, as they kept discovering people of interest, but none of them had ever been shown to be suspects. The sheriff's department was given the case in 2020 after they had suspicions that she had been murdered outside of Battle Creek City. Only in 2021, when they least expected it, did they make progress in the case. The case has stalled after about 16 years of little progress. Then, however, something occurred that would alter everything. When police in Pennsylvania suddenly discovered a lead in Ashley Parlier's case in January 2021, they contacted officers in Calhoun County. Harold David Holman III, a 44-year-old serial murderer, was being questioned by Pennsylvania authorities in connection with the killings of Tiana Phillips and Erica Schultz. Holman did not want a trial at that time, so he asked the authorities if they could combine the three cases of Phillips, Schultz, and Parlier. Ashley Parlier had not been brought up by the police at any point during the exchange. They questioned him further about the Parlier case, since they were unsure of what he was talking about, and the results were startling. It was a complete confession, rather than merely a lead. The detectives promptly contacted the Calhoun County Police Department to update them on the latest case development. After taking over, the Calhoun County Police Department's investigation showed that Holman had resided in Battle Creek from 2002 to 2009 and had communicated with Parlier. Following Ashley's argument at home, police discovered that Holman had been in communication with Parlier. In Emmett Township, Michigan, she paid him a visit. Ashley informed him that a pregnancy test was requested by her parents. After getting into a fight with Ashley, Holman attacked her, knocked her out, and carried her to the Pennsylvania hills, where he struck her skull with a piece of wood until she was immobile. He also told police that he had disposed of his bloodied clothes after leaving Ashley someplace in Newton Township's northern section. On November 29, 1978, Harold David Holman III was born. Before becoming a young man, Holman lived in Germany with his father from his early teens until his father moved to Turkey, leaving him to live with his girlfriend. He looked like a typical young man at the time. The fact that he would become a serial killer was not anticipated. Holman killed someone for the first time when he was 20 years old. On May 3, 1999, 21-year-old Joseph Whitehurst, the son of an Air Force colonel, was residing at a military installation in southwest Germany. He was discovered outside Ramstein Air Base after going missing. A club discovered at the scene of the murder had been used to bludgeon him to death a few days later. Holman admitted to killing Whitehurst after being apprehended by German police for an unrelated offense. Holman claimed that he attacked Whitehurst first because he felt threatened by him when he had begun dancing around the campfire. As Holman told the authorities, "I don't know how many times I hit him and then I was gone, but it was the biggest rush I ever felt, like your whole body to this day." He was only given a 6-year sentence at a German reform school in spite of his confession. A person under the age of 21 must be tried in a juvenile court in accordance with German legislation. Furthermore, Holman received a less sentence because he was also diagnosed with schizophrenia at the time. After that, he returned to America and worked as a truck driver in Emmett Township, living close to Battle Creek, Lakeview, and the Fairfax Addition. Around this time, he appeared to play a significant part in Ashley Parlier's 2005 disappearance. Tiana Phillips, a mother of 2 children, vanished on June 13, 2018. 3 years later, when he was eventually arrested and being questioned by the police, he said that he had wanted to kill again rather than specifically kill Phillips. Erica Schultz knew a man online as Dave, and she wasn't sure if she would ever meet him. Erica went missing on December 6, 2020. Because Erica was a habitual person with autism, the police looked through her phone records and linked Holman to her murder when she failed to appear. "Killing Erica Schultz was like just another day in the park for me," he said nonchalantly in his confession. He was discovered with a self-inflicted wound beside railroad tracks in Duncan, Pennsylvania, at the time of his arrest. He felt that in order to atone for his misdeeds, he had to die. Holman confessed to killing Schultz and Phillips when he was in the hospital getting treatment. He confessed to killing Phillips, whom he had slept with, in a letter to his estranged wife while he was incarcerated. To emphasize that he would never do such a thing with her, he stated that he wished to confess to the crime. His ex-wife was clearly alarmed and took the letter to the police. She added that she had not believed Holman when he had previously claimed to have killed a lady. He was a serial killer due to the commonality of his acts. His victims had all vanished. They were all injured in the head. After attacking them and rendering them unconscious, he completed the task. He did not bury the remains. Instead, he disposed of them in isolated locations. Actually, Schultz and Phillips were killed on the same day. In the cases of Tiana Phillips and Erica Schultz, Holman has been accused of abduction, criminal homicide, and abuse of a corpse. Detective John Pignatch of the Calhoun County Sheriff's Department stated that Holman was not a temporary resident and did not have a permanent address in Pennsylvania in 2021. He attributed all of this to his family and a failed marriage. According to him, there are alphas and non-alphas. That's simply the case. A master and a slave, or whatever you want to call them, are present. That's how life is constructed. He had to seek that dynamic in extramarital affairs because his wife refused to yield to him. He studied serial killers after Parlier's passing. He always said that he remembered every murder, including specifics of what he did to each one, when asked which one he remembered the most. He needed to be removed from the streets right away because police were certain he was a serial killer. Holman actually acknowledged that he would have killed again if he hadn't been apprehended. In his confession, Holman made it clear that he had met Ashley Parlier, who had been with her parents, in a bowling alley. The confession in the court document also made clear that he struck up a conversation with her, which later resulted in a deeper relationship when she argued with her parents. After phoning Holman, she went to his house. Ashley told him that she was being forced to obtain a pregnancy test by her parents. He admitted to being the father of the child Ashley was expecting. Their subsequent dispute infuriated him and he knocked her out. Then, on the night of June 13, 2005, he killed her by repeatedly beating her in the head. He described it as an overgrown meadow 10 miles from the town in the middle of nowhere, Michigan. There was a small house nearby, perhaps a garage, but it was deserted. We took a seat. I was absorbed in my own universe as I sat there. Ashley was just out in the back. When he located a suitable location while sitting with Ashley's comatose body beside him, he made the conscious decision to kill her there. Then it occurred, he added. I was sitting there and no cars drove by. The longer I sat there, the more I thought, this is a good place as any. I removed her, brought her to the location, and completed the task. He struck her and saw her perish. He went home and showered when he was certain Ashley was gone. He later disposed of his clothes at Meijer, an American supercenter, where he was employed at the time. The fact that he pursued the case for years and years is even more startling. At one point, he even went to see if Ashley was still alive, but all he discovered were bones. He came forward and apologized to the Parlier family after being questioned further. Holman denied that it was premeditated. I don't want that to happen with Ashley, he stated. I regret Ashley's murder more than any of them, he continued. It should be mentioned that he had already killed several people when this confession was made public in recent years. Ashley's sister, Nicole, was puzzled and unable to contain her emotions after learning that Holman had claimed that Ashley had approached him for assistance. She was appalled that Holman had killed Ashley in cold blood in spite of this information. Holman killed her because he thought that things had gotten out of control. On the one hand, he claimed that he was intoxicated for 3 weeks in a row because he felt terrible for killing her. He wanted to put the incident out of his mind. However, he clarified that the entire killing procedure gave him an adrenaline high that was unmatched by anything else. Nicole was discouraged to learn that his apologies was merely a pretext for flaunting his horrible behavior. She claimed that their ignorance was quite difficult. My mother's depression and loss caused her Huntington's disease to worsen rapidly. My dad was the same way. As a mom myself, I understand their struggles. What kind of individual could do it is difficult to comprehend. I could never comprehend having such a strong desire to harm someone. Holman acknowledged that he was unable to console the family verbally, but he would be prepared to beat them up with a log if they so desired. The apology did not sit well with Nicole. Along with losing her sister, she also lost her parents, who passed away in sorrow and bewilderment. It was true, she thought, that Holman killed more than simply Ashley. There were more persons Harl Holman had murdered than only his immediate victims. The loved ones of many of his victims had died, and they were unaware of what had become of them. Nicole created a social media page called Bring Ashley Home, which she used to connect with the other Pennsylvania victims' elder sisters. They think they have formed buddies and are united by their shared misery. She stated that when Nicole presents her victim impact statement on behalf of the entire Parlier family on April 10th during Holman's trial, the 3 older sisters of the other Pennsylvania victims will accompany her. She said, "We're going to remember our sisters, and we're going to remember Ashley and Tiana and Erica and not him. We're going to remember how they were good people who loved and were caring, and he's just going to rot." Ashley had been out of the house for 18 years after a fight with her parents. After what occurred to her, she never went back home. Her return home was a top priority for the police. Throughout the years, they looked everywhere for solutions. The police therefore asked Harold Holman to show them where he had left Ashley's body once he came out with the confession. According to the officers and the prosecution, Ashley Parley's case was extremely labor-intensive and emotionally charged. Nearly 20 years had passed since the original detectives attempted to solve the mystery. The Parlier case was given to several detectives in the next years. They even flew across the nation to find possible witnesses and gather the evidence they needed to convict the criminal after failing to discover the answers in the city. In March, Sheriff Steve Hinckley told the media that the officers had visited Pennsylvania, Maryland, and California to look into Parlier's case. The investigating team included Detective John Pignato of the Calhoun County Sheriff's Department, Detective Dave Huminga, and Detective Sergeant Chris Suarez of the Michigan State Police. Holman guided the police to a wooded region in Newton Township south of Battle Creek, at a 6.5-mile road. On March 30, 2022, almost 24 officers conducted a search for Ashley's remains, but after several hours of work they were unable to locate her body. When Ashley vanished, the region remained farmland, But within a few years, it was all divided up and sold to other property owners, locals told the media. The policemen's attempts were all in vain. Holman acknowledged that he was unable to appropriately situate Ashley where he had left him after all these years and the local developments. Ashley's remains are still being sought by the authorities. It should come as no surprise that the man who had previously murdered 3 women and possibly more was terrified of being executed. He received 2 life sentences in prison. No kind of parole was given to him. Holman entered a guilty plea to Ashley Parlier's second-degree murder in February 2023. He consented to assist Calhoun County authorities in locating Ashley's remains in the vicinity of the purported location of his disposal. It is a component of the plea agreement with the Office of the District Attorney for Luzerne County. He is set to be sentenced in April 2023 and faces a maximum life sentence in prison in return for not being given the death penalty. In order to solve Ashley Parlier's case and locate her remains, the Calhoun County Sheriff is still searching for any information. Call 269-781-0880 to reach the Calhoun County Sheriff's Office if you have any information. When a loved one disappears, every minute is challenging. Imagine being heartbroken, grieving, and depressed for 18 years with only a glimmer of hope that they could return at some point. Consider the uncertainty about whether to continue waiting or to simply end the depressing experience. In the spring of 2020, Ashley's parents, Russell and Cherie, passed away without ever understanding what had happened to their daughter. Imagine the anguish and suffering they endured when they came to terms with the fact that they would never find out what had happened to Ashley, particularly since she had left the house in a state of rage. Imagine how their lives must have been when they were the target of active suspicion over the disappearance of their own daughter from the police, the media, and true crime fans. However, even though it took 18 years, Ashley's story was finally resolved. At least her family is aware of what happened to her, even though she hasn't returned home yet, because the police are still looking for her remains. Do you believe that Harold Holman might have had other victims? Regarding Holman's apologies, what are your thoughts? Does he kill people for fun, or does he actually have a mental illness? And that wraps up today's chilling story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a new upload. Also, let me know in the comments, what part of this story shocked you the most? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey guys, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. Victor Auxiliers, a seasoned skydiver, made another jump on a typical sunny day in Wiltshire County. The sensation of wind on her face, the rush of adrenaline, and the view of the infinite sky were all familiar to her. However, she became aware that something had gone horribly wrong shortly after she had deployed her parachute. The reserve parachute did not deploy correctly, and the lines were tangled. Victoria fell with a terrifying velocity. Her only concern during that heart-stopping moment was her kids and how they would be left without her. However, how could a seasoned teacher like this make such a mistake, and why? These questions led to the discovery of a terrifying mystery that would permanently alter Victoria's life. Victoria Cilliers, who is she? Victoria Cilliers was born in 1977 to a retired military officer in Edinburgh, Scotland's capital. She was lively, vivacious, and full of life from a young age. She devotedly pursued a number of sports during her school years, and when she made her first skydive at the age of 16, she instantly fell in love with the sky. Victoria entered the University of Glasgow's medical program after graduating from high school. She obtained her degree in physical therapy while still participating in sports. She joined the British Army as a physical therapist because she wanted to be like her father. Victoria developed into a highly accomplished skydiver in addition to her medical career. She completed more than 1,500 jumps and obtained her instructor's certification. As a mentor with the Army National Parachuting Association and a free-fall coach, she was a true professional. Through perseverance and hard work, Victoria rose to the position of captain by the time she turned 30, marking a significant career accomplishment. She made a good living while juggling her duties as a skydiving instructor and a physical therapist at a military hospital. Her private life, however, was less fortunate. She wed a medical colleague in 2008, but the union disintegrated after just 1 year. A tall, gregarious officer named Emile Cilliers entered the hospital where Victoria worked in the middle of 2009. He ended up attending one of Victoria's therapy sessions while he was recuperating from a skiing accident. He quickly became the love of her life and her second husband, a love that nearly cost her everything. Emile Cilliers, an unfaithful partner and perilous charmer. Let's now examine the primary antagonist of the narrative. Born in South Africa in 1980, Emile Cilliers came from a wealthy British expat family that ran a construction business. His parents catered to all of his needs and desires, allowing him to grow up pampered and conceited. Emile began dating Nicolene Shepherd, a young girl, when he was 17. He was already employed at his father's business and had completed high school by then. Emile knew how to make a good impression, dressed well, and always had money to spend. Shortly before her 16th birthday, Nicolene became pregnant and gave birth to their first child, a daughter. A second child was born to the couple approximately a year and a half later. However, they never made it to the altar, even though they had 2 children together. Emile asserted that he was not prepared for the obligations of family life. He kept having affairs with other women in spite of his role as a father. Although he didn't try hard to conceal his actions, he was always able to win Nicolene back and persuade her to stay with him. Emile made the decision to relocate to the UK in the early 2000s with the intention of establishing a prosperous career, purchasing a house, and eventually bringing Nicolene and the children to live with him. On a work visa, he went to the UK, but his trip didn't go as expected. Emile took on menial side jobs to make ends meet because he was having trouble finding steady employment. He often lived with different women and made fewer calls home to save money. Emile consistently refused Nicolene's requests to bring them to the UK or return to South Africa. Citing financial difficulties, he said he was unable to provide for them. However, he frequently bought pricey things for himself and lavished gifts on his many romantic partners. Nicolene and the kids were temporarily financially supported by Emile's parents. Nicolene's prospective mother-in-law then disclosed a startling secret during one of their conversations. Emile had just gotten married. Carly Taylor, a British woman, became his new wife. Nicolene called Emile that same day and demanded an explanation. He reassured her calmly that the marriage was solely for legal purposes, to obtain permanent residency in the United Kingdom. Nicolene tried to remain composed and trusted his story, but she soon discovered he had no intention of inviting them over. She packed one suitcase, gathered her children, and took a plane to the UK, determined to force Emile to take responsibility. She desired Emile to be involved in raising their kids. By this point, Carly was expecting their second child, and Emile and Carly already had a son together. Carly was unaware of the existence of Nicolene and her 2 children. The unexpected appearance of Nicolene surprised Emile and his expectant wife. In an attempt to make his shocked wife understand him, Emile had to switch to South African Afrikaans. He told Nicolene quite bluntly that he had no intention of continuing to be involved in their children's lives, and that their relationship was over. The always endearing Emile was forced to tell his wife who she was, but the heartbroken Nicolene fled in tears. However, Nicolene was portrayed as a villain rather than a victim in the highly embellished story he told Carly. For about 6.5 years, Emile and Carly were married, but their marriage was not happy. It was the same pattern as in his last relationship. Emile regularly cheated on Carly with several women he met wherever he went, even though they had 2 kids together. Interestingly, Nicolene, Carly, and later Victoria would all talk about Emile's incessant demands for intimacy, even weeks after giving birth, with little consideration for the discomfort or health hazards his partners might face. Emile signed a contract to join the Army Physical Training Corps shortly after he married Carly, joining the British Armed Forces. He basically turned into a fitness instructor who earned a respectable salary and a military rank. Emile and Victoria's love story. Emile broke his ankle in a skiing accident in 2009 and ended up in the hospital. Victoria, a physical therapist, was there when he first met her. Immediately, sparks flew between them. It made no difference that Victoria was 3 years older. Emile tried his best to comfort her in any way he could, because she was still emotionally healing from a recent divorce. Victoria was initially unaware that her new romantic interest was still married. Similarly, Carly was unaware that her husband was meeting with a divorce lawyer and getting ready to file for divorce. When the truth was revealed, Emil attempted to blame Carly for his marriage's failure, but she responded by telling Victoria that Nicolai and Emil had 2 other children. This realization astounded Victoria. Her ostensibly ideal partner had a convoluted past, including 4 children and 2 prior relationships. Emil, however, insisted that he had never felt this way about anyone else and declared his unwavering love for her. Victoria had already fallen deeply in love with him, even though those words might have meant nothing to someone else. She discovered that she could accept him for who he was, flaws and all, and forgive the lies. With time, Carly and Victoria were able to establish a true friendship in addition to becoming cordial. The 2 women had become so close that Carly even trusted Victoria to take care of her kids. Emil quickly proposed to Victoria after completing his divorce in 2010. The couple threw a lavish wedding after she gladly accepted. After her parents died, Victoria used the money she inherited from them to buy a large house in Wiltshire, where they now reside. The couple's first child, a daughter named April, was born in 2011. In 2015, their son Ben was born, expanding their family. Spending a lot of time with their children, the new parents seemed committed. Their family appeared to be content and strong from the outside. Victoria was an enthusiastic skydiver who had even introduced the sport to her husband, Emil. He became an expert in packing both main and reserve parachutes and obtained his own certification as a skydiving instructor, giving the family an additional source of income. With 2 gorgeous kids, a devoted husband who had just been promoted to sergeant, and a life that appeared ideal to their friends and family, Victoria's marriage seemed like a dream come true. However, Emil soon got tired of this seemingly perfect life. He started looking for affairs, and even though he didn't do much to conceal his actions, he would constantly beg Victoria's pardon on his knees. He would vouch for the fact that these liaisons were pointless and that she was the only person he loved. In order to keep up appearances, and the appearance of a perfect family in front of friends, family, and co-workers, Victoria repeatedly forgave him. As previously stated, Victoria had been an instructor at the Army Parachute Association and had a deep love for skydiving since she was a young girl. By early 2015, she had performed more than 2,500 jumps without any mistakes or mishaps. Naturally, Victoria had to take a break from the sport she loved so much during her pregnancy, and she missed it terribly. Her second child was born in early March 2015. Emil then shocked her on April 1st by telling her that he had reserved a tandem skydive for the 2 of them. Victoria was ecstatic, perceiving this as a considerate act from her spouse, who appeared to wish to inject some excitement into their everyday routine. The couple arrived at the skydiving base with their older daughter on April 4, the day of the scheduled jump. They prepared, but the weather abruptly changed against them. Heavy clouds rolled in and the wind increased, making it impossible for the plane to take off. The jump was rescheduled for Easter Sunday the following day. Upon arriving home, Emil abruptly informed Victoria that he would not be able to accompany her the following day. In addition to insisting that it would be best to leave the kids at home because they would only grow tired and no one else would be available to watch them, he said that urgent matters had arisen. Emil wished Victoria luck as he bid her farewell on the morning of April 5 and remained behind with their 5-week-old son and 4-year-old daughter. With a positive attitude, Victoria set out, looking forward to her long-awaited jump. However, the weather wasn't great again. After waiting for several hours, the group was finally given the all-clear to take off. The plane carrying 12 skydivers took off at around 3 p.m. One by one, the skydivers started their jumps at the proper altitude. Last to jump, Victoria Cillier relished every moment of her ascent through the sky, but as soon as she pulled the cord to release her parachute, she knew something was seriously amiss. No matter how hard she tried, she was unable to untangle the tangled lines of her main parachute. Quickly, she sliced it off and proceeded to use her backup chute. The unimaginable occurred at that point. Approximately 1/3 of the reserve parachute opened. It looked like this might be the end, as Victoria started to spin wildly through the air at a terrifying speed. Victoria later acknowledged that, although she was afraid, she didn't consider dying. Her husband and their 2 young children were waiting for her at home and she was thinking about them. She tried to position her body to minimize the injuries from the inevitable impact and did everything she could to slow her fall. In her ears, the wind roared. She lost all sense of time and space as everything whirled around her. The world grew dark. Victoria was lying in a recently plowed field when she came to. She couldn't understand what had happened or why there was so much noise all around her. She was confused. Her co-workers were shocked to discover her alive after racing to the scene. They were taken aback, however, when Victoria opened her eyes and requested assistance in standing up. As it happened, she had been extremely lucky. Her fall had been cushioned by the soft, loose soil, avoiding potentially fatal injuries. Victoria had suffered a broken leg, collarbone, and multiple ribs, but she miraculously survived. However, her head, internal organs, and spine were largely intact on the side she landed on. After being airlifted to the closest hospital by emergency personnel, it is almost unheard of for both parachutes to fail, and it is rarely necessary to deploy a reserve parachute. Red flags were raised right away. After learning of the incident, the skydiving base's lead instructor made the decision to examine Victoria's parachutes in person. Although the main chute's lines were tangled, it was unclear if this was the result of a packer's error or if someone had purposefully sabotaged it. Things became even more suspicious when the reserve parachute was examined. There were two essential pieces of equipment missing. It appeared as though these parts had never been there and had never been torn away because there was no indication of damage. Victoria came perilously close to death as a result of the reserve chute's improper deployment. A mistake of this size was practically impossible because the parachute had been inspected at least 10 times by numerous experienced professionals. The lead instructor was extremely concerned about both parachute failures. He made the decision to report a possible murder attempt to the police on his own. It just so happened that, at about the same time, Victoria's best friend Caroline called the police with a similar worry. But Caroline didn't think twice about naming the suspect she had in mind. When Caroline learned of the suspicious accident, she became concerned. She told investigators that Emil, Victoria's husband, might be connected. Caroline claims that although the marriage appeared to be happy on the surface, Emil was actually a toxic and manipulative partner. Victoria disregarded numerous warning signs because she was so consumed by her love for him. An expanding study. The parachutes turned out to be important pieces of evidence during the police's thorough investigation into the incident. Victoria, meanwhile, recovered remarkably quickly and was in the hospital for less than a month. She credited her husband's constant care and support for her quick recovery. Emil seemed to be the ideal husband, showing her affection, taking care of the house, and assisting with their kids. Victoria was therefore taken aback when policemen arrived at their door to talk to Mr. Cilliers. Emil didn't fight back. He went to the station voluntarily to respond to their inquiries. Emil, a negligent father and an unfaithful husband, maintained his composure while being questioned, but he was aware that investigators would soon find text messages he had exchanged with his many lovers. He made the decision to discuss his affairs with others in the hopes of avoiding the disclosures. He acknowledged that he had been dissatisfied in his marriage and blamed Victoria for not providing for him. He claimed that although he had been preparing to divorce her for some time, he had put it off due to the children. Emil admitted that he had been seeing an Austrian ski instructor named Stephanie Galler for about 6 months, and even had plans to wed her shortly. Emil disclosed his financial difficulties as well. He owed a lot of money to a number of individuals and businesses that provided high-interest loans. He was a self-confessed gambling addict who regularly wagered and lost, which led to his debts skyrocketing. He said that some of his creditors had started threatening him, and he even implied that Victoria's death attempt might have been a warning to him. As it happened, Emil Cilliers did have a mountain of debt, but his account of the parachute incident sounded so implausible. The fact that Emil casually stated that he had personally examined his wife's parachutes and never left them in his sight, even bringing them with him when he used the restroom, only served to heighten investigators' suspicions. The police detained him for additional interrogation after this detail raised serious concerns. Officers conversed with Victoria at home during this time, telling her about the strange details and the suspicions expressed by the lead instructor and her friend Caroline. Victoria was shaken and in disbelief. She acknowledged her husband's extramarital affairs and financial difficulties, admitting that their marriage was far from ideal. She also disclosed that Emil had not been very enthusiastic about the birth of their youngest son, and had hardly spent any time with her children. Victoria found it difficult to accept that her husband would ever wish to hurt her, in spite of everything. Emile didn't initially seem to have a strong reason to divorce his wife. First of all, despite his mounting debts, Victoria had always supported him financially and forgiven him for his infidelity, giving him unfettered access to her bank account. Emile led a comfortable life and indulged in his vices. Second, Victoria had safeguarded her resources. In her will, she left her savings account and the house she purchased prior to their marriage to her sister. Her sister would take on the role of guardian for the children in the event of her death, guaranteeing Emile would not be able to access the inheritance. Victoria feared her husband would waste everything because she knew he was not responsible for his finances. Emile was also aware of this and realized that her estate would not be advantageous to him. Investigators believed that he might have been motivated by the possibility that he would receive a life insurance payout of almost £200,000 if Victoria died. Emile was also planning to move abroad with his new girlfriend as part of their future plans. Victoria recalled an important detail when questioned about the parachute. Taking Victoria's backpack with him, Emile had taken their daughter to the bathroom when she needed to use it on the day of the jump. According to the rules, all equipment had to be returned because the jump was canceled that day due to bad weather. However, Emile persuaded Victoria to leave the equipment in a locker, claiming that doing so would avoid the lines at the equipment window the following morning and save time. Victoria insisted, however, that her husband was not allowed to tamper with the parachutes. She noted that he had only been gone for roughly 5 minutes, which was, in her opinion, not nearly enough time to make any changes to the equipment. Caroline talked about a terrifying experience that happened a week prior to the unsuccessful parachute jump during her interview. Victoria had almost died from a gas leak at home. Victoria and their 2 kids were left alone when Emile said he had to spend the night at the barracks the previous evening. Victoria smelled gas the following morning. When she called Emile to tell him, he told her that she was just dreaming and told her to start cooking without worrying. Fortunately, Victoria was not easily persuaded. When the technician from the gas company arrived after she called, they found a significant leak at the gas valve located inside a cabinet close to the stove. The valve nut's noticeable scratches indicated that someone had used a wrench to tamper with it. Emile was notoriously clumsy with tools, so it appeared that he was the one who made the marks. Additionally, there were blood traces on the valve from a cut he probably sustained while working on it quickly, and he hadn't bothered to clean up the evidence. According to investigators, he had loosened the nut just enough to start a slow leak, not enough to be noticeable unless there was an explosion. Later, Emile asserted that the valve had most likely come loose due to vibrations from a nearby building's construction. The incident was written off as a strange accident at the time, and no one suspected Emile of foul play. However, if an explosion had occurred, Victoria and their 2 small children might have perished, instantly resolving Emile's issues. Determined to depart for Austria with his new partner Stephanie, he swiftly came up with the plan with the parachutes after that plan failed. The suspected attacker is defended by the victim. Victoria persisted in defending her husband, claiming he could never want her dead, in spite of all the dubious evidence and witness statements. At that point, investigators decided it was time to expose her to the harsh reality of the man she had lived with. They told Stephanie about Emile's messages, in which he essentially asked her to marry him. He had written about his desire to start a new life, and his profound regrets about marrying Victoria. That wasn't all, though. Emile had profiles on several dating apps, was seeing a number of other women, and even went to speed dating events to meet new people for casual dates. But finding out that her husband had been having an affair with his ex-wife Carly was the greatest betrayal for Victoria. Unaware of Emile's dishonesty, Carly and Victoria were good friends who frequently worked out weekend custody arrangements for the children. Although Victoria acknowledged that the gas leak incident had raised suspicions from the beginning, she chose to ignore them because she believed her husband would never endanger their children. In addition, he had been gone nearly 3 times as long as Emile, who had only been in the bathroom for 5 minutes with her parachute. He said their daughter had spent a lot of time in the restroom when he got back. Victoria was also aware that her husband was using her credit cards to make extravagant purchases for his mistresses. Emile, however, had consistently maintained that fraudsters had somehow obtained his account details and pledged to notify the authorities of the theft, even though he never did. The case was taken to court because of Victoria's and other witnesses' strong testimony. An expert would only need roughly 10 minutes to sabotage both parachutes and repack them carefully enough to evade detection, according to a reenactment done during the investigation. The fact that Emil had allegedly attempted to harm his wife twice, putting not only her but also their children in danger, persisted even though the majority of the evidence appeared circumstantial. When the trial started in November 2017, Emil vehemently denied all of the charges. He asserted that he would never endanger his own children and that he would never harm the mother of his children. In addition, he claimed that Victoria had been on the edge of a breakdown after multiple heated arguments with him and that she may have tampered with her own parachute because she was suffering from severe postpartum depression. Victoria was experiencing an odd situation. Emil almost seemed to hypnotize her. She reiterated his allegations in court, saying he couldn't have hurt her or their kids. She even acknowledged that she had experienced depression following the birth of their son. Attendees at the trial were unable to ignore how strongly Emil continued to influence her. Emil was found guilty of all charges on June 15, 2018, and given a life sentence with the possibility of release after at least 18 years. Victoria finally admitted to herself that she had been living with a real monster for all those years, and she filed for divorce shortly after the trial. And that wraps up today's chilling story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a new upload. Also, let me know in the comments, what part of this story shocked you the most? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey guys, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. Roger Kemp died in his Livewood home on March 5, 2022 at the age of 77. He took care of his family right up until the last minute and was the ideal father and husband. But until his passing, Roger was plagued by a single recollection from 20 years ago. Since tragedy had radically altered his life, he had to spend 2 arduous years becoming a careful detective in order to identify the culprit behind the premature death of his only daughter. Since the police were essentially helpless, the case might not have been solved if Roger hadn't gotten involved. Roger, however, was above the police and could not let the criminal escape punishment. Let's go back in time and observe what transpired on that fateful day. Let's get started. The setting for our story was Livewood, Kansas, a tiny, secure suburb of the state. Every neighbor in this neighborhood knows you by name and greets you with a pleasant day. On June 18, 2002, 19-year-old Alexandra Kemp's morning began as usual. Her dad had left for work. Her mother was preparing a delectable meal, while her younger brother was still in bed. Alexandra was rushing to get to work, so she didn't drink her coffee. After completing her first year of college, Allie, as her loved ones nicknamed her, spent the summer vacations back in her hometown. She was hired as a lifeguard at a public outdoor pool where her brother and boyfriend were already employed. Allie quietly examined the surroundings and cleaned the auxiliary facilities on that day, when there were hardly any guests. Allie went into the pump room and turned around when she heard a voice she didn't recognize. He rushed her and began tearing at her clothing until she gestured for him to leave the restricted area and pointed to the door. He was much stronger than Ali, who struck him in the face. She attempted to scream, but he put his palm over her mouth and drowned out any sound from the running pumps. A second later, Ali was unconscious. After a while, her brother Tyler arrived at the pool to cover for her. He was unable to locate her, but he did spot her personal stuff on a table. He called her by name and looked everywhere, but Ali did not answer. The young man called their father, Roger, in a panic, and Roger hurried to the pool, dropping everything. Roger was relieved to see that Ali was not in the pool after he and Tyler thoroughly examined the area. Roger entered the pump room and noticed a flashlight shining on a large piece of tarpaulin in the dark. He saw a foot protruding from beneath the sheet, followed by a pool of blood on the floor. At the sight, the father yelled and threw off the tarp. He dropped to his knees in an attempt to rouse her, but she was not responding. Roger Kemp reported his daughter's fatal injuries to the emergency services at 5:29 p.m. The father attempted to resuscitate his daughter during the conversation. Blood still trickled from the wounds he had caused, but he covered her lovingly with his jacket. During their conversation, Roger begged her to stay. However, the girl was not conscious. Allie Kemp, 19, was pronounced dead at the hospital after the deceased was transferred there immediately. She never returned, but I hope she was still awake and could hear me. According to Roger, a pool of blood was found close to Alexandra Elizabeth Kemp's multiple blunt force head injuries that occurred soon after she arrived at the neighboring hospital. She had a ripped top. Her neck showed evidence of strangulation and she was without pants or undergarments. Her nails were ripped off and several of her fingers were fractured, indicating that she had been severely beaten before being deprived of her life. Items were scattered haphazardly in the pump room where Allie's body was discovered. It became evident that Allie and her attacker had engaged in a heated battle, during which she persisted, but he outmatched her in strength. The victim's body was sent for forensic analysis after her life was deemed over, and the murder scene was carefully examined. Regretfully, neither the pump room nor the pool's grounds contained the weapon used in the crime. However, investigators had to figure out why a blood-stained container of ointment that was typically stored in the first aid box was discovered at the crime scene so strange. For examination, the ointment tube and its cap were gathered. In my 35 years of service, this was probably the most horrific crime that could occur in the Livewood community, said Police Chief Craig Hill, who examined the crime scene and offered his sympathies to the parents of the deceased Allie Kemp. Both the public and the investigators were left with too many unanswered questions by this atrocity, which rocked the sleepy community. Since the motive for the crime against the young woman was one of the primary questions, the inquiry was perplexed. Robbery was initially thought to be the motivation, but since her pocketbook and everything in it were undamaged, this notion was totally disproved. After obtaining the forensic examination report, it was determined that Allie had not experienced intimate partner violence, despite the second alleged motivation being an attack. Even seasoned investigators found the incident weird and intriguing because there was no motive for it, let alone either of these two. Therefore, who had the right to brutally end the life of a young woman whose life had only begun? On October 11, 1982, Alexandra Elizabeth Kemp was born in Livewood. Allie, the Kemp family's only daughter, was the much-anticipated first child. She grew up in the picturesque, tree-lined suburb of Livewood with her parents and two brothers in a loving household. She received honors when she graduated from high school. Was chosen as the most attractive girl in the 7th grade and loved poetry and soccer. In 2002, Allie followed her aspirations and enrolled at Kansas State University. Her family and boyfriend were waiting for her when she returned to her hometown of Leawood after completing her first year of university. 4 blocks from her family's house, she accepted a position as a member of the service staff at the neighborhood pool. Her brother and boyfriend were already working at a local pool, and it was a great job. Allie was therefore a young, bright woman who could not have had any adversaries because she was raised in a loving and caring environment. To obtain a more comprehensive picture of the day of the crime, investigators spoke with Allie's friends and acquaintances and kept investigating several ideas on the assault. Phil House, Allie's boyfriend, was one of the initial suspects. Allie and he had been dating for more than 5 years by 2002. He had known Allie from school. The police had to treat Phil as a suspect even though it didn't seem like he had any motive to hurt Allie. Under interrogation, Phil clarified that Allie had taken his place at the pool at 2:00 p.m. before leaving for another work. He stayed until 4 p.m., after which he was playing video games at a friend's house when he got a call informing him that Allie was in the hospital. Colleagues and acquaintances with whom Phil had been playing games verified his alibi. But he did provide the police with important information. As it happened, Phil was unable to answer when Allie contacted him at 2:52 p.m. because she did not answer the phone when he contacted her again at 3:44 p.m. Authorities surmised that Allie met her terrible end at this time. This hint did not help the police discover the perpetrator, despite their determination to solve the case as soon as possible. As there should have been enough on a summer day at a public pool, there was optimism in the testimony of possible witnesses. However, the pool was nearly empty that day due to unfavorable weather, and the hunt for any hints or testimonies was moving very slowly. A few days later, it was determined that 2 workers from a lawn care firm were in the parking lot on the day of the incident. After re-interviewing the pool personnel and the neighborhood, when they were taken in for interrogation, they reported seeing an automobile circle the parking lot at approximately 2:40 p.m., occasionally pulling away and then coming back. The suspect vehicle, a beige 1980 Ford truck, was well described by them. The authorities now had a crucial piece of information, even though they were missing the car's license plate number. But one of Ali's pals provided even more useful information. A description of the suspected culprit was aided by the testimony of Laurel Wynn, a friend of Ali's. As it turned out, Ali called her friend Laurel at around 3 p.m. that day to ask her to keep her company while she worked at the pool. Since it was a foggy and chilly day, there weren't many people there. After some time, Laurel's automobile finally pulled into the pool parking area. There was no answer when she called Ali. Laurel thought it would be funny to blow loudly on a lifeguard whistle, since she didn't see Ali outdoors. Just then, a man came out of the pump room while feigning to be on the phone. Laurel suspected he was Lee's supervisor, so in order to keep her friend out of trouble, she hurried out of the pool. Laurel was able to recall the man's face as he turned around and waved to her as she left the pool area. Presuming she had spotted the offender, Laurel went without waiting for a call from her friend. Based on Laurel's account, the police produced and released a composite sketch in the hopes of identifying the offender. This led to the creation of an extremely precise sketch of the alleged culprit. Local television aired the sketch and the description of the suspicious car. The likelihood of finding and apprehending the offender was definitely improved by this publicity. And it's true that the police got a ton of reports from folks who thought they saw this man. This brought the investigation's first suspect, a young guy named James Drider, to light. Drider looked a lot like the composite sketch and had an old Ford pickup. He worked as a mechanic at a tiny auto repair business in Olata, which is about a 20-minute drive from Livewood. Police contacted the believed culprit at his place of employment after acquiring his address. James, however, had an alibi and strongly denied any involvement in the incident. James Drider was removed from the list of suspects, despite his close likeness to the composite, since his manager verified that he was at the auto business on June 18 because he was at work all day. The hunt went on. Roger persisted even as the path cooled over the course of several months. He pursued new leads while investigators worked on each one. Roger carried out his own research with tenacity. His frequent visits to the police station included a variety of suggestions for apprehending the offender. Roger's persistent efforts earned him a spot on America's Most Wanted, where he not only told Ali's story, but also displayed the composite sketch of the suspected criminal. Both local and national television networks carried the well-liked program. Police stations were inundated with fresh communications. Every message was carefully examined, but for different reasons. Almost instantly, every fresh suspect was thrown out. Phil House, Ali's 5-year boyfriend, also helped. He started a virtual quest by contacting college students via email. A reward of $50,000 0 cents was offered for any information that led to an arrest, and he encouraged them to view the America's Most Wanted show that focused on Ali's case and look at the composite sketch. The case came to a standstill once more in spite of all attempts. But cops learned something new about the once familiar James Drider 6 months after Ali was killed. As it happened, news organizations in nearby Colorado covered the hunt for a man who had committed 3 assaults in January 2003. Ryder, who had been ruled out as a suspect in Ali's murder and was now sought for assaults, was identified by Roger from the wanted sketch. The police were certain they had identified their suspect despite the driver's alibi on the day of Ali Kemp's murder, but they still needed to establish James's involvement. Investigators were unable to match DNA since the man was not in the database, because he had no past convictions. In order to compare this person's DNA with that recovered from the crime scene, they needed to examine him once again. James Drider was by this time evasive and nearly impossible to find. 3 weeks passed before the cops located him at a Utah gas station. When Drider didn't pay for his fuel, the employees arrested him and called the police. James Drider was charged with 3 assaults and may have been responsible for Ali Kemp's death. Police were dismayed to discover no similarities between his DNA sample and the sample taken from the crime scene. Ali Kemp was not killed by James Drider, a serial killer. This was a significant setback, because police had to start the case afresh after it had come so close to catching the suspect. Days stretched into weeks, and weeks into months, and the police still had no fresh leads in the case of Ali Kemp. Roger, Ali's father, tried everything in his ability to find his daughter's attacker, even though the police's interest in the case gradually diminished after 2 years. Despite having few choices, he kept in touch with USA Today, which released the composite sketch of the suspected suspect. Roger looked frantically for a man with a big face and a hint of baldness. He put up wanted signs all around the city. As a loving father, he wanted to preserve his daughter's narrative in the public memory in addition to apprehending the offender. Roger then had a simple yet excellent idea one day. He noticed a billboard at the entrance to the city. He realized that this billboard was seen every day by hundreds or possibly thousands of individuals. The composite sketch might be placed on it, why not? To rent the billboard, he got in touch with an advertising firm. After hearing Mr. Kemp's tale, the company's management offered to place the poster for free on 8 billboards along the highways close to. Roger's efforts eventually started to pay off, with an estimated 10,000 people viewing his billboards each day. Police began to get reports of persons who looked like the drawing 2 years after Ali Kemp was killed. A young man called Benjamin Appleby was among the many tips that came in as a result of the billboard, television commercials, and a larger prize. Ted Hoover was the name of this person who resided in Bantam, Connecticut. The 29-year-old man lived under the alias Hoover in order to evade being charged with a personal crime. Beginning in 1997, he possessed a Ford truck that was the same beige color as the car the suspect was thought to be driving. As it turned out, Ted Hoover was employed in 2002 to do pool maintenance, especially at the pool where Ali was killed. Equipped with this knowledge, detectives visited Ted Hoover's residence to interrogate him. He acted unsure and clearly anxious during the chat. Ted was asked to submit a DNA sample at the conclusion of the conversation in order to be removed from the suspect list. He attempted to avoid this request by making excuses, but it was obvious that he was unprepared for it. He first requested some time to reflect and asked that samples be held until he could consult with his attorney. The investigator called Ted Hoover's attorney the following day, who told him that Ted was against willingly giving the police a DNA sample because he did not want his DNA included to the national database. Investigators made an effort to get the attorney to sign a document guaranteeing that the DNA would not be added to any database and would just be utilized in connection with Ali Kemp's case. The attorney asked to take a moment to tell his client of this. 2 days later, though, the attorney replied that his client was still opposed to giving the police his DNA. The investigators were certain that this person had a secret. They recalled having a conversation with Ted Hoover at the location of Ali's death many years prior. He did not appear suspicious at the time, but the police had questioned him in relation to Ali's case without making the breakthrough they were hoping for. The detectives were forced to get an order for the mandatory collection of Ted Hoover's DNA, and when they returned to his home on March 24, 2004, they discovered it was deserted. The man was gone. During the search, Ted Hoover was formally listed as sought on suspicion of killing Ali Kemp, but Roger remained involved. He went back to the tried and true strategy of posting posters on billboards in nearby states. He bought more than 500 billboard ads. In Colorado, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, and Nebraska, Ted Hoover's face was on exhibit. Since the entire billboard campaign now cost over $100,000, 0 cents, Roger Kemp had to spend all of his funds and even sell the house his family had occupied for more than 20 years in order to pay for such a big manhunt. And it wasn't for nothing. Missouri notified the police in August 2004 that someone had recognized the individual from the billboard. The report did note, however, that this person was now going by Benjamin Appleby instead of Ted Hoover. When the police arrived at the house given in the tip, they did in fact find the man they knew to be Ted Hoover. The cops lawfully took a sample of his saliva and immediately detained him on suspicion of murder. When the DNA from the crime scene and that of Benjamin Appleby, also known as Ted Hoover, matched, their suspicions were validated. Benjamin's past encounters with the law included intimate partner crimes and robberies. He was arrested by Connecticut police on a previous warrant after being accused of indecent exposure. He admitted to the police when they questioned him about Ali's murder that he had tried to flirt with the girl he liked, but she had not reciprocated. Benjamin lost control and attacked her when she pushed him away when he attempted to touch her. Benjamin was later accused of both attempted assault and murder. On both charges, he was found guilty. "I choked her. I suppose I have no idea why I did." In a recorded interview, Benjamin Appleby stated as much. Appleby claims that he touched her, but not very deeply. Ang Lee, he said, and when she objected, he started beating and strangling the 19-year-old. The investigators then discovered the terrible explanation for the antiseptic ointment's open state. When Allie passed out and Appleby required lubricant, he attempted to attack her. Benjamin Appleby defended himself by claiming that he just lost it, went back to his car, and drove off. On the last day of the trial, Benjamin Appleby, also known as Ted Hoover, was found guilty and given a 50-year prison sentence on December 10, 2005. According to Kansas law, he was found guilty and given a 50-year prison term without the possibility of release until 2054. But after serving his term for a number of years, Benjamin Appleby has questioned whether his punishment under the Kansas Hard 50 legislation was fair. He contended that Kansas law automatically mandated that his sentence be changed because the elements that resulted to his Hard 50 were decided by a judge rather than a jury, as mandated by a prior U.S. Supreme Court decision. Prosecutors argue that the Hard 50 should be maintained and that Benjamin Appleby's case is exempt from the state statute. Roger Kemp cautioned the public that lowering Benjamin Appleby's prison sentence would endanger other young girls and women. Roger Kemp's battle and his search for the guy responsible for his daughter's death came to an end at this point. He had a somewhat unique notion as a result of his unwavering commitment to see Ali's attacker brought to justice. He intended to display the composite sketch on highway billboards for everyone to see. The creative use of billboards by Roger Kemp to expand his audience proved to be a very successful strategy. Following Benjamin Appleby's conviction, a number of jurisdictions nationwide made the decision to implement comparable policies, with varying degrees of success. Take Defense is the name of the Ali Kemp Educational Foundation, which Roger Kemp started. Girls and young women between the ages of 12 and 23 can receive self-defense instruction there. Workshops are held all throughout the country. Hundreds of testimonies from women have been sent by participants, stating that the training preserved their lives till his final days and even stopped attacks. Over 70,000 people nationwide have taken this self-defense course, and Kemp himself has given speeches at events and prior to each local session. Subsequently, he established the Ali Kemp Educational Foundation, or just TAKE, a self-defense program that trains women and girls of all ages how to defend yourself in perilous circumstances. For his efforts with the charity, Roger Kemp was also given the Presidential Citizens Medal in 2011. Kemp was one of 13 individuals out of 6,000 nominations to be granted one of the highest awards the president bestows on civilians. He wished to educate other women how to defend themselves, since he thought his daughter would still be alive if she had learned how to do so. He did not want to remember that terrible day that radically altered his life, and years after the terrible death of his only beloved daughter, he still could not bear to talk about the vicious attack on her. Because he tried to attack her, which is so difficult for me to say, he took her life. In an interview, Roger Kemp said that after killing her, he attempted to attack her once more. The close-knit family of friends and acquaintances who actively participated in the hunt for Alexandra Kemp's attacker continues to commemorate and lament her unexpected and unfair death, kind, passionate, and never-ending. Roger Kemp died when he was 77 years old. According to his friend and co-worker Jill Leaker, he was a true national treasure. Hundreds of people were able to obtain justice thanks to Roger Kemp's inventiveness. Since being inspired by Kemp's concept, numerous other law enforcement agencies nationwide have implemented comparable billboard tactics. In Kansas alone, these billboards have assisted law enforcement in apprehending over 30 fugitives. Roger Kemp once stated, "You have two choices on a well-known television program. You have two options. Either get out of bed and fight the battle I decided to wage, or stay in bed and cover your head." He honored his promise that I would never allow him to win. He saved the town from a vicious criminal who undoubtedly would have done the same thing again thanks to his efforts. Bravo to a genuinely strong person and a caring, devoted parent. And that wraps up today's chilling story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a new upload. Also, let me know in the comments what part of this story shocked you the most. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey guys, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. Faith Hedgepeth, then 19 years old, was discovered dead in her Chapel Hill apartment in 2012. When authorities started their investigation, they soon encountered a wall of uncertainty and dead ends. They were diverted by conflicting accounts from her closest friends and family, odd 911 calls, and false leads. Investigators were frequently left with more questions than answers. When a seemingly promising lead turned out to be a dead end, the case became colder as time went on and important pieces of evidence stopped making sense. The identity of Faith's killer remained a mystery despite constant efforts. Why did the inquiry stall so significantly, and who was responsible for her brutal death? Let's investigate this case. Unaware of the tragic turn their day would take, Rosario and her companion Marisol Rangel arrived back at their flat just before 11 a.m. on September 6, 2012. They called for Faith as they walked in, but the place was oddly silent. Uncertain of what to anticipate, they approached Faith's bedroom with trepidation. They were stunned by what they discovered. Faith's corpse was on the ground, partially wrapped in a blanket and covered in blood. 3 years after Faith was brutally killed in an apartment she shared with a friend by a killer who is still at large, there are still many unanswered questions and speculations surrounding this case. Shocked, Rosario called 911, her voice shaking as she described what she had found. Once vibrant, Faith was gone, leaving the friends to wonder forever, who could have done this, and why? We must examine the final hours of Faith's life in order to comprehend what transpired to get to this point. Around 5:45 p.m. on the evening of September 5, 2012, Faith went to a rush event for Alpha Pi Omega, a Native American sorority at the University of North Carolina. She met Rosario after departing at 7:15 p.m., and the two of them studied at the library until almost 9 p.m. Around this same period, Faith texted her father about her plans for the future. He still has the final voicemail he ever got from her saved. After returning to the flat at around 11:30 p.m., they went out once more, landing at The Thrill, a nightclub, at 12:40 a.m. They danced and socialized for around an hour and a half. Their departure was captured by security cameras. Since Rosario wasn't feeling well, they made the decision to return to the flat, arriving just as Faith's Facebook account was accessed. Faith's phone sent a text message to Rosario's ex-boyfriend Brandon Edwards at approximately 3:40 a.m. "Hey B, can you come over here please? Rosario needs you more." You know. Please let her know you care." 3 minutes later, the same phone sent another message that contained the word "than," which was thought to be a correction for a typo in the first message. The last known activity on Hedgepeth's phone was this text exchange. After that, Rosario attempted to get in touch with Edwards and then collegiate soccer player Jordan McCrary, but neither of them answered. Rosario thought Faith was asleep when she left the flat at 4:25 a.m. She stayed at a friend's place until the next morning. Rosario attempted to contact Faith once more at 10:30 a.m., but received no response. She contacted Marisol out of concern, and the two of them proceeded to the apartment where Faith's death was found. Who was in charge? Is Rosario Rangel or another person involved? Faith's cause of death is still unknown, but as the inquiry progresses, more information will become available. Faith Hedgepeth, a proud member of the Holly-Washapani Native American tribe, was born in 1992 in Warren County, North Carolina. After her parents divorced, Faith was raised by her mother, Connie, and she grew up in a difficult home. Connie, who had 3 children already, named her Faith because she thought it would give her the courage and optimism she needed to raise a 4th kid in a challenging situation. Faith was a good student in spite of these obstacles. As a cheerleader, honor student, and involved member of multiple clubs, she succeeded in high school. She attended the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill thanks to her diligence, which earned her a Gates Millennium Scholarship. Faith dreamed of becoming a teacher or a pediatrician and wanted to be the first member of her family to earn a college degree. Despite taking the spring 2012 semester off, she had a successful first 2 years at UNC Chach. She shared a Chapel Hill off-campus apartment with her friend Karina Rosario and Rosario's boyfriend Eric Taco Jones throughout that summer. But Karina and Eric had a violent relationship, and Faith assisted Karina in obtaining a protective order against Eric after he twice attempted to enter into their apartment. Eric lost his temper and even threatened to kill Faith if he couldn't reconcile with Karina. Faith's life had taken a dark turn, And even though she continued to have hope for the future, she found herself in a precarious situation. Faith's family was devastated by her passing. Faith's loss was unfathomable to her mother, who had already dealt with a lot of difficulties as a single mom raising her children. Having lost a sister who served as a support system and role model, Faith's siblings were also devastated. Her family was left to deal with her passing. She had been a bright, kind young woman with a bright future. In addition to being extremely personal, Faith's passing was a setback for the entire community, which had supported her aspirations and watched her develop. Her family was left feeling incredibly empty and unable to comprehend why someone so full of promise had been brutally ripped from them. The choice to start the investigation into Faith's death in secret sparked immediate criticism. In contrast to standard police practice, the Chapel Hill authorities took considerable care to conceal information. All records were sealed by a court order, and even the media's repeated requests for information were turned down. The police worked discreetly behind closed doors, gathering evidence from the incident without disclosing what they had discovered, while the community awaited answers. Semen and extracted DNA were the first important clues from the actual crime site. When the autopsy report stated that Faith had died from blunt force trauma to the head, most likely from a rum bottle, the question became even more complicated, even though it matched male DNA discovered elsewhere in the apartment. From the beginning, the police focused on one man, Karina Rosario's ex-boyfriend, Eric Taco Jones. He was a prime suspect because of his history of domestic abuse and his previous threats against Faith. "Forgive me for what I am about to do," Jones had even warned in a text message to a friend the night before the murder, and he later shared the same statement on Twitter. He altered his Facebook banner to a haunting precursor to what appeared to be an admission of guilt 3 days after Faith's death. "Dear Lord, forgive me for all my sins and the sins I may commit today." Police were unable to directly link Jones to the crime in spite of these warning signs. He provided a DNA sample, but it did not match the evidence gathered at the scene. No matches were found in additional DNA testing from other individuals, including those who had visited the local nightclub where Faith and Karina had spent time. After Jones was formally ruled out as a suspect, the inquiry appeared to come to a standstill. It appeared as though the puzzle pieces would be put together fast when the inquiry into Faith's death originally started, but as time passed, detectives discovered evidence that only made the mystery more complex. The disclosure of some anticipated and some surprising details suggested an incomprehensible level of intricacy. The 911 call, which would subsequently come under close examination, was a crucial piece of evidence in the case. After discovering her friends dead at their apartment, Karina Rosario called. Many found it strange that she only referred to Faith as her buddy during the call, never mentioning her by name. Reporter Tom Gasparovia questioned the legitimacy of the conversation, speculating that it might not have been Rosario but perhaps Marisol Rangel, whose voice sounded similar. Additionally, Rosario appeared abnormally hesitant during the conversation, despite the dispatcher's repeated requests for her to check Faith's respiration, Gasparovia noted. Was the individual who found the body truly as innocent as they appeared to be? Was the 911 call itself a hint? The people who were following the case started to have these types of questions. The odd information wasn't limited to the 911 call either. Confusion was further exacerbated by another important piece of evidence discovered close to the crime scene, a mysterious letter written on a piece of ripped paper. Written in a sloppy hand with a ballpoint pen, the message said, "I'm not stupid, bitch, jealous." Its rambling, angry writing appeared to be the result of a fit of wrath, but it was unclear what it meant. Why would someone leave a letter at a murder site? The ripped piece of paper seems to have come from a takeaway bag from Time Out, where Faith and Karina had eaten at that evening. However, was the note a spontaneous outburst or a private communication to Faith? When forensic specialists examined the note, they discovered that the handwriting was erratic. The word stupid, which was written much more clearly, was underlined by one, perhaps by someone attempting to hide their identity or deceive investigators. Even more concerning was the fact that the message seemed to be written before the murder because there was blood all around the room, and the note itself seemed free of blood. Why abandon it? Was it a deliberate deception or a hint? Reporter Tom Gasparelli speculated that Faith might not have been the intended recipient of the note. The murderer might have planted it to trick detectives. Was it a last desperate communication, or was it a lie? The note's emotional tone suggested intense annoyance or jealousy. Was it Faith or someone else that the murderer was angry at? Faith's own phone provided yet another horrifying piece of evidence in her case. Faith's phone unintentionally called a friend the night before she was murdered, recording a brief but unsettling chat. With background noise and muddled conversations, it initially appeared to be a simple pocket dial accident. However, when audio specialist Arlo West examined the call, he found some concerning snippets. West also claimed to hear a woman's voice saying, "I think she's dying," followed by a man's voice saying, "Do it anyhow." References to Eric and Rosie that seemed to connect the conversation to Faith's roommate Karina Rosario and her violent past with Eric Taco Jones were also heard. The call's timestamp of 1:23 a.m. coincided with the claimed time when Faith arrived at the club. Police initially brushed it off, thinking the call was simply background noise from a night out. However, West pointed out that there were several oddities, such as the unusual absence of typical nightclub sounds, which gave the scene a strange vibe. Did the call record the last seconds before Faith was killed? Or might it have been recorded earlier? These unresolved issues gave an already terrible case a troubling undertone. Investigators were left with more questions than answers as they combed through this perplexing evidence. Although these pieces of evidence were far from conclusive, they were sufficient to raise the possibility that the murderer may have left behind more than just tangible evidence at the site. They might have left a trail of psychological hints that, if the investigators could decipher their actual meaning, could tell us a lot about the killer's mental state. The public's annoyance increased while the case went unresolved. A $29,000 0-cents reward was given by the university, the Halawashaponi tribe, the local Crime Stoppers chapter, and the apartment complex where Faith had resided for any information that resulted in an arrest. It was believed that the reward would lead to a tip that would completely unravel the case. However, months and weeks went by with no improvement. There was still no breakthrough when Governor Bev Perdue increased the award by an additional $10.00. The probe was conducted in secret in the interim. The UNC student newspaper, the Daily Tar Heel, petitioned for the release of the secret documents in November 2012. The case remained sealed beneath a veil of silence when the court rejected their plea, despite publicly claiming that their daughter's death certificate verified she had been battered. Faith's family was also kept in the dark about several specifics. The town of Chapel Hill remained uneasy as the months passed. The FBI has created a profile of the male DNA recovered from the scene by January 2013. According to the authorities, this person had lived close to Faith, had expressed interest in her, and his actions had probably changed after the crime. The court nevertheless mandated that the records be kept secret in spite of this development. The public was left in the dark about the case, which appeared to be proceeding behind closed doors. The police didn't formally ask the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation for assistance until September 2013, a full year after Faith's passing. Chris Blue, the police chief for Chapel Hill, acknowledged that they had run out of options and that the case had gone cold. The murder of Faith was still a mystery, and the case files were still sealed. After 2 months, the inquiry took yet another unsettling turn. Publications such as the Tar Heel started to doubt the investigation's objectivity. Why hadn't the police pursued important leads? Although the police had never thoroughly searched the neighborhood, neighbors in the apartment building where Faith had resided said they had concerns about Eric Jones long before the murder. Only Faith's apartment had actually been completely examined. The other apartments in the complex, including the woods beyond the building, had not been looked at. When it was discovered that police had never examined security footage from the Thrills parking lot, a significant lost opportunity became apparent. The owner of the towing firm that was in charge of the parking lot, the nightclub where Faith and Karina had spent the night before the murder, had installed security cameras that may have recorded important footage. But it wasn't until almost 19 months after the incident that the police requested to view it. The court eventually ordered the records to be opened in 2014. Following a great deal of public pressure. Following the release of important papers by investigators, such as the search warrants and investigative notes, there was a flurry of media coverage. These documents demonstrated the extent, or lack thereof, of the police involvement in the case. They also offered the first glimpse of the chronology of events that preceded Faith's demise. The autopsy report was eventually released to the public in September 2014, over 2 years after the murder. It validated the suspicions of many. Faith had suffered severe physical abuse. Blood was discovered beneath her fingernails, indicating that she had retaliated against the severe blow to her head. Initially believed to be the key to identifying the murderer, the DNA recovered from the site remained a mystery. The question of who killed Faith Hedgepeth and why remained unanswered despite ongoing investigation. Unanswered questions became more pressing as the investigation progressed. Had the police conducted the inquiry improperly in the beginning? The most disturbing of all was the identity of the man whose DNA was discovered at the scene, and the reason behind Faith's murder. For years to come, these questions would still exist. Faith Hedgepeth's death remained a mystery for years, with many speculations but no conclusive solutions. One thing was certain: despite the speculation about suspects and motivations, Faith's killer was probably someone who knew her. According to Chapel Hill police, the murder was committed by a member of her UNC Chapel Hill social circle rather than at random. Investigators interviewed more than 2,000 people over the years, obtained 750 people's DNA, and reduced the number of potential suspects to 10. Chief Chris Blue stressed in 2016 that the case was still very much alive despite the lapse of time. In their quest for the truth, the police continued to concentrate on this core group. However, the issue still stood. What motivated the murderer to carry out such a heinous act, and who was the murderer? But on September 23, 2016, almost 4 years after Faith's passing, the case took even another unexpected turn as the inquiry proceeded to uncover. Unexpectedly, the Chapel Hill police announced that they had teamed up with Parabon Nanolabs, a genetic testing business that had created a device that could create physical representations of suspects using their DNA. This public image provided a unique look at the unidentified culprit and was solely based on the DNA profile found at the crime site. It wasn't a perfect portrait, of course. It was predicated on phenotyping, which is the process of predicting physical characteristics from an individual's genetic makeup. Snapshot: Parabon's technology uses DNA to forecast skin tone, freckles, eye and hair color, and even the shape of a person's face. The president of the organization indicated that, while their system could provide a remarkably high level of detail regarding a person's possible appearance, it was unable to forecast a person's height or weight. A man of mixed ancestry, mainly Native American and European with some Latino heritage, was the image produced by DNA analysis. In addition to having origins in Mexican, Colombian, and Iberian civilizations, he was probably dark-skinned, black-hailed, and freckle-free, with faint indications of South American and African heritage. The forecast provided a very accurate likeness and was made with over 80% confidence. Investigators were able to see a potential suspect for the first time thanks to this picture, but it also made them wonder, who was this person? Why had the police failed to identify them? And how did their DNA get to the crime scene? Notwithstanding this recent development, journalist Tom Gasparoli hypothesized in 2017 that the murderer might be a distant acquaintance of Faith's who harbored animosity or resentment toward her. When authorities began concentrating on Faith's roommate, Carino Rosario, this theory gathered traction. Since Rosario never mentioned Faith by name and only ever referred to her as a friend, her 911 call raised questions. Faith's texts to her ex-boyfriend that evening conveyed a sense of urgency over Rosario's need for him. Although Rosario claimed to have left the flat while Faith was asleep, there were questions raised regarding her account. Rosario remained silent and had moved away, but she kept in touch with investigators. Gasparoli made hints that she might be more knowledgeable than she was admitting, and that she might have the secret to cracking the case. The question was whether the truth will ever be revealed for so long. A significant development in the case did not occur until 2021. A breakthrough in September 2021 would finally provide resolution after almost 10 years of mystery, but it also sparked new inquiries. Miguel Salguero Olivares, 28, of Durham, North Carolina, was taken into custody by Chapel Hill police after he had not been previously considered a suspect. Why was he arrested and what changed? DNA was the solution. In August 2021, Salguero Olivares was detained on a different charge of driving under the influence. However, the DNA found during his arrest would eventually link him to Faith Hedgepeth's murder. According to court records filed in January 2022, Salguero Olivares' DNA and the palm print on the murder weapon both matched those taken from the crime site. Even though the discovery marked a sea change in the case, the police were still hesitant to speak in public. Chief Blue informed the media that although Salguero Olivares had been taken into custody, the full narrative will take time to develop. Now, it was unclear how Salguero Olivares, an unidentified player in the case, had gotten involved. How did he relate to Faith? Although the arrest introduced a new level of intricacy to the case, it did not provide all the answers. Did Salguero Olivares have a close relationship with Faith, or was his involvement only incidental? What had motivated him to carry out such a horrific crime was maybe even more disturbing. Salguero Olivares is currently in 2024, awaiting his trial, and minimal information is available about him. New possibilities and previous ideas of Faith's death blended together as investigators examined Salguero Olivares' involvement. Did he have a deeper connection to her? Or was he just a stranger? What did that mean for Rosario and other suspects if he was involved? Roland Hedgepeth, Faith's father, conveyed his appreciation and thanked God for allowing him to see this event. Connie Hedgepeth, Faith's mother, assured the public that the truth regarding her daughter's passing will eventually come to light. While Salguero Olivares' arrest provided some clarification, it also sparked other inquiries. After years of research, the case remained mysterious, and the full tale was still unknown as it entered its second decade. Although the arrest didn't end the investigation, it did offer a new dimension and raise questions about whether this was the last piece, or merely a new development in an ongoing mystery. And that wraps up today's chilling story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a new upload. Also, let me know in the comments, what part of this story shocked you the most? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey guys, today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. I'd be super grateful for that. Let's get started. Any life may be wrapped in a lovely wrapping, even the most embarrassing ones. You will undoubtedly feel pity and sadness for the unfavorable character if you tell it calmly and portray him as a victim of his circumstances. The truth is that a lot of bad individuals are charming, strong, and crafty, and we honestly think that they weren't always nasty, since they frequently created these situations, and we unconsciously justify their egregious actions. However, we won't defend unlawful behavior today, and we won't cover for anyone. You will choose for yourself whether their actions are justified after reading about this case. A neighborhood person made a spooky call to emergency services on April 4, 2015. He had gone into a friend's living room to turn on the lights and check on him, but when he got to the second floor of the room, he discovered blood all over the place. A scared male voice shouted into the dispatcher's phone. According to the victim's acquaintance, the injured man was not breathing and everything was soaked in blood. Charles Taylor, 59, was brutally murdered in Montgomery County's unincorporated village of Alette after police arrived, shocking the population. The crime scene resembled the set of a horror film and appeared to be the source of nightmares. The couch where the slain guy was found was fully covered in blood, and there was blood all over the carpet and paintings. It appeared to be a grudge drama due to the savagery of the act. After all, the assailant undoubtedly intended for Charles to suffer from excruciating anguish in addition to his death, repeatedly stabbing him with a sharp knife. The fact that Charles's bloody body was found upstairs in his room and that the house search revealed no obvious evidence of forced entry indicated that the criminal was familiar with the residence and had taken decisive action. Charles Taylor died as a result of 31 stab wounds and blunt force trauma to the back of his skull, according to the results of the forensic medical investigation. Charles Taylor was regarded as a generous and compassionate man. He had a wonderful relationship with his adult son. He loved Amanda, his daughter-in-law, and his 2 grandkids. People see this aspect of life and make judgments regarding the health of the family. How rich, how evil. They describe the family as a healthy family, but did the Taylor family actually live like this? Let's investigate this unpleasant family situation. Because there were few leads available to the authorities, the initial inquiry proceeded somewhat slowly. They began searching for Charles's associates, but they were unable to locate anyone with the intention or motivation to hurt him. They quickly discovered the attackers' identity after the theory that it was a member of Charles Taylor's family emerged. That's actually when investigators were fortunate enough to be contacted by a crime blogger who had pictures of Amanda Taylor taking selfies next to Charles's dead body. The wanted list now includes her. On March 27, 1991, Amanda Barbara Nicole Taylor was born in Christiansburg, Virginia. Not much is known about Amanda's early years. The only reason it was challenging is that both of her parents served time in prison. After meeting Mariah Robach, Amanda created a lot of troubles for herself, which led to the start of her youth. Amanda started living an illegal life together. According to Montgomery County Sheriff's records, on October 23, 2005, when the sisters were only 12 years old, they got into a lot of trouble. Amanda and Mariah were charged with unlawful use of a motor vehicle after they fled their home and got into a car. Amanda was accused of unruly conduct at her middle school in early April 2006. She screamed that she would kill everyone there since she detested the place and everyone in it. This is just a small part of Amanda's police station record, and this incident undoubtedly went beyond the bounds of typical teen drama. Amanda started dating Rex Taylor, who was 2 years her senior in 9th grade. On March 27th, Amanda and Rex were born on the same day. Both of them interpreted it as a divine sign. When Amanda learned she was expecting a child, she quit school altogether. She married Rex and they had a son shortly after. However, her criminal impulses persisted after becoming a mother. Additional run-ins with the law also punctuated the years of her married life. Amanda Taylor's police station reports increased rapidly. So had a criminal record for possession of a controlled substance, a conviction for alcohol possession, multiple domestic disputes, and another attempt to flee after stealing a car. Rex Taylor, her spouse, was not from a perfect home either, and Rex battled addictions and the depression they brought around despite their love for one another. The young man developed an addiction to illegal narcotics at the age of 15. The couple eventually had a baby, and at first it appeared that Amanda was still in control and had become a perfect wife and mother. However, she was a little different from other American women in their 20s who have tattoos, piercings, and undoubtedly post daily selfies on social media, as well as the family. Amanda and Rex's relationship was everything but typical. The pair addressed letters to well-known serial killers while they were inside and studied their biographies obsessively. Amanda started to fantasize of turning into a criminal herself, but tragedy befell the family before Amanda could fulfill her dreadful ambition. Amanda's fears about her husband's infidelity overshadowed the couple's complex relationship. The pair finally parted ways in April 2014 when their paths diverged. After moving back in with the family, Rex started using illegal drugs once more. He had hanged himself on his son's 7th birthday, and his lifeless body was found in a shed on the property 4 months after the transfer. Amanda briefly stayed with her mother and friend Mariah Robach after losing her cherished husband. She made friends with Sean Ball, another Robach family member, while she was staying with her friend Mariah. On their joint birthday, March 27, 2015, Amanda visited Rex's grave and made an attempt to commit herself. Since her behavior and mental processes were obviously abnormal and could endanger herself and others, she was rescued and taken by force to a mental health facility. Amanda was promptly sent home, however, in spite of her mother's demands and entreaties for extended care. Due to her unstable personality issues, things appeared to get worse when she was discharged from the mental health facility. Thus, Amanda was asked to leave by Mariah and her husband. Mr. Ball, who had fallen deeply in love with Amanda, was also expelled. Amanda's late husband, Rex Taylor, served as the basis for her intense urge to kill during this time. When it appeared like her only true friends had abandoned her, she wanted to honor Rex and make him proud of her, and in order to do that, someone had to be expertly killed while he was still alive. Additionally, Rex had a fascination with serial killers that had long transcended his hobby status. During his lifetime, he was proud of the close friendship he had with criminals. Imagine discovering an envelope addressed to you from a well-known serial criminal who was arrested in 1980 when you go to the mailbox one morning after leaving your home. You are relieved to discover a birthday card for your little child and a handwritten note inside the envelope rather than any eerie keepsakes. Some would contend that getting such a message would be just as terrible as getting a strand of hair or a severed finger. In any case, it would be unusual for most people to get anything in the mail from a serial offender, but Amanda and Rex Taylor's family did not. Some terrible disclosures of earlier social media posts under Amanda's account have proven Amanda's fixation with crime, as well as Rex's behavior and his desire to communicate and receive experiences from renowned serial criminals. Amanda praises a number of criminals in a number of blogs for their heinous acts, such as Timothy McVeigh, the mastermind of the biggest terrorist assault in American history, and Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, two young men who planned a mass shooting at Columbine High School. She naturally chose to begin her career as a criminal with a vengeance, since she wanted to be one of those vicious criminals she so greatly admired. After a while, Amanda blamed her husband's death on Rex's father, Charlie Taylor, saying that he had not assisted Rex in kicking his pill addiction but had instead acclimated his son to illegal substances. The cold-bloodedness and cynicism with which Amanda exacted revenge on her father-in-law, Charlie Taylor, will chill you to your core. She required a helper who would support her acts without reservation. She needed a willing accomplice to support her if she felt threatened, and Amanda already had one. Of course, it was Sean Ball, the man she was in love with. She was worried that she wouldn't be able to do it alone the first time. It was only a matter of time until she would take over him. Amanda quickly found the eager accomplice she sought in Sean, but since he didn't know what he was getting himself into, Sean and Amanda came up with their evil plan with military accuracy and carried it out. At precisely 3:27 p.m., the time that Rex and Amanda were born, Amanda and Sean visited Charles Taylor's run-down house in the neighboring town of Ironton, Virginia, on a spring April afternoon in 2015. In order to fill an Easter basket for her cherished grandchildren, Charles had to pay her money. After a half hour of pleasant conversation, Amanda suddenly sat down on the couch beside Charles, as if a switch had been flipped in her brain. Amanda's actions took a significant turn. After she started viciously stabbing Charles with a knife, Sean struck him in the head with a tire iron. Then, after shocking Charles, Amanda drove the knife hard into his chest once more. She seemed so angry that she was unable to see anything around her, and Charles simply stared at her and said, "What are you doing?" He reached out and grabbed her hair as she stabbed him, but Amanda kept stabbing him, and he kept screaming. Amanda Taylor used a sharp bayonet knife to stab her father-in-law, Charles Taylor, 31 times. She wanted to feel his final breath and wanted him to know that she was the one killing him every time she looked into his eyes. She desired Charles's death as a form of retaliation. The whole room was covered in blood, and she halted as her anger started to fade. Amanda didn't stop there either. By snapping a photo of herself close to the body and sharing it on social media, she went one step further in her extreme behavior. A frightening phone call with Amanda's voice on the other end of the line came to Amanda's mother later that day from an unidentified number. She broke down in tears as she told her mother how much she loved her and how valuable all she had done for her was. She also revealed through sobs that she had done what she had to do, and it was a terrible thing. Her mother could feel it, and she knew that something horrible had occurred. Amanda resisted her plea for her daughter to return to Christiansburg, saying that she and Sean were en route to Pittsburgh. It was well known that Amanda was in a downhill spiral, and it all began nearly 8 months ago when her husband, Rex Taylor, who had battled depression and illegal substance misuse for years, committed suicide by hanging. When authorities looked at Amanda's social media profile, they were taken aback. It was obvious that she took great pride in the crime she had done. The police issued a warrant for her arrest in the hopes of a speedy settlement, but Amanda and Sean had already made their getaway by then. As though they were planning a fantastic vacation rather than being on the run, Amanda and Sean chose a really picturesque escape route. They traveled from Virginia to North Carolina along the Blue Ridge Parkway. According to the photographs taken at the crime site, which depict the heinousness of the crime, the authorities were quite concerned that the killers would carry on killing, and they were correct, because Amanda didn't stop there. Amanda's sins would not, however, go unpunished. She did not mean to conceal her act, nor did she intend to punish herself after doing her intended crime. She started posting on social media shortly after she and Sean Ball left on the road. accepting responsibility for the murder and claiming that she did it for her husband. However, Amanda and Sean were more than just fugitives. After committing her first crime, which Amanda believed was ideal, they were now following their next victim. She was unable to stop. She had to continue killing. They took out cash at a gas station, filled up the car, and drove on to Tennessee. After tasting blood, Amanda was determined to carry out her wish to commit another crime, and she would come very close to doing so despite Sean's best efforts to persuade her to stop and simply go on the run, hide, and lay low. After stopping at a Fleabag motel in Tennessee, they restocked on ammunition at a sporting goods store. The following day, they departed to grant Amanda's bleeding desire after spending the night in a motel by the side of the road. At a rest area on Blue Ridge Boulevard, Amanda spots two young girls who might become her next victims. "I'm going to bring these girls in so we can shoot them," she said to Sean. He agreed that they needed money. Amanda walked outside to guide them to the car, but Sean wouldn't shoot them when she brought them inside. Amanda was enraged. She returned to the vehicle and drove off. She was unable to control herself, so she halted the vehicle in the driveway and attacked her accomplice. She was now aiming for Sean. After taking a handgun from the glove box, Amanda exited the vehicle and went to the passenger side, where Sean was sitting with his eyes closed in fear. She had gone so far. She was so enraged that she pointed the gun at the random jogger in front of her and squeezed the trigger. Fortunately, Amanda missed, and Sean opened his eyes and regained consciousness when he heard the gunfire. He noticed that the revolver's muzzle was aimed at him. Amanda claimed that she wanted him to understand that she was simply using him for the car and the pistol before killing him. Then she fired, striking Sean square in the face. Amanda left Sean bleeding on the side of the road from the gunshot wound after taking a photo of his wounded face to share on social media. She was now running by herself. They possessed firearms. They had already purchased magazines and ammunition for the identical weapon and had taken them from a relative's home. The police captain was aware that they appeared to agree on the course of events, which would begin with Charles Taylor's murder. Amanda kept posting notes while the police pursued her. She disclosed that she killed Sean in a field during a traffic check in her subsequent social media post. Amanda shared a photo of a silver revolver in her lap along with a comment on Instagram. It resembled a suicide note more than anything else. "All right, that moment is coming up. I will finally find peace when I find my hubby in hell. I know you will give my lovely kids the life I could never offer them, and I love you, Mom. I'll be free at last." In an effort to find Amanda, the police were keeping a close eye on her account and recording surveillance footage from patrol stations along the white SUV's path. It also aided authorities in pursuing the criminals as they fled in it. Amanda was located by cell tower signals, and officers from the North Carolina State Highway Patrol saw the white SUV traveling east on I-40, close to Asheville. No matter how much she ran, she attempted to stop. She refused to give up easily. The police were ready. They were aware that she was dangerous and armed. Later that day, another grim social media post that read, "Okay, the time is about to come when I find my husband in hell and finally become one with him," further solidified this truth. Amanda appears arrogant in her photo, as like she is pleased with her accomplishments. Eventually, all the commotion and devastation stopped after a 2-mile stretch of spikes that had been placed deliberately in Amanda's route. Amanda was arrested. Amanda was handcuffed by police after they dragged her from the automobile at around 8 in the morning. Paramedics discovered Sean dead by the side of the road. Amanda feigned indifference to the proceedings in the interrogation room. Before Captain Robert realized it, she was messing with her hair and drinking a soft drink when another detective entered. Amanda gave up her right to silence and admitted to everything when questioned. She appeared to feel completely at home. Amanda found out that Sean wasn't dead after speaking with the investigators. There were no markings on him other than the fact that the bullet had passed right through his jaw and made him faint from the pain. Amanda then made the heartbreaking admission that she wished to be put to death. "Is there anything you can do? The death punishment alone is what I would want." In the interrogation audio, Amanda claims, "I kill people. I'm worthy of dying. I'd be better off just leaving. If I could just get the death penalty and go, it would be best for my kids." In a startling turn of events, Amanda later found herself apologizing and entering a not guilty plea in front of the court. However, During the trial, Amanda detailed her crime and maintained that she had done the right thing by killing old Charles, who had stolen Rex from her. She claimed that after being furious with Rex for harming her, she became even more enraged with his father. Amanda said that she wished for Charles to experience the same suffering that she experienced. She claimed that she killed Charles because she believed he was responsible for the death of her husband Rex, to whom Charles had allegedly given illegal substances. Amanda claimed that the instant Charles mentioned Rex once more, she turned to him and began stabbing him, which made her feel more alive than she had since Rex had passed away. She acknowledged that the times when the knife penetrated her father-in-law made her very happy. At last, Amanda let out all of her pent-up resentment and rage. Captain Robert New stated, "She did it to get attention, and by not pleading guilty, she got the opportunity to talk about the case." Amanda gave an awful explanation. She does, after all, liken the sensation of the crime to a pleasant recollection. The jury heard testimony during the November 2015 trial about Amanda's 31 stabbings of Charles and her intended targets, chest and face. The jury found Amanda Taylor guilty of first-degree murder in under 30 minutes. She received a life sentence. She was described as the height of depravity by the judge. Sean Ball accepted a suspended 60-year sentence as part of the plea agreement. After serving 41 years in jail, Sean acknowledged that he is not deserving of pity and that he is deeply sorry for his actions, but he still has to live with the shame of his actions every day and wonders why this happened in his life. As part of a plea deal, Sean Ball admitted to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 41 years in prison. The 60-year term was suspended, but Ball was required to serve 41 years and 1 month. Amanda recently lost her appeal of her conviction. She stated that if necessary, she intends to appeal her conviction to the Supreme Court. Amanda became famous as a killer selfie taker, but she obviously did not turn into a serial criminal. In a phone interview from prison for a popular show, Amanda Taylor made a devastating admission. She responded, "I was just really excited and thought I wanted to take a picture so I could post it and show everyone it made me really happy," when asked why she shot body selfies. Lastly, she stated that she did precisely what she wanted to do and that she has no regrets whatsoever for what she did to Charles Taylor. In an incredible phone interview with a local reporter at this period, she likened the experience of getting stabbed to going on a roller coaster. She compared the nerves and the sense of freedom to my first roller coaster ride, and that's exactly how I felt. I had no intention of doing it. You don't see it in the movies. It is truly an animal phenomenon. Amanda Taylor wants more after committing a horrible crime. From an early age, Amanda Taylor was regarded by many who knew her as a very evil and gloomy woman who was obsessed with crime, murder, and serial killers. Pictures of strange death scenes were all over her social media accounts. Amanda Taylor is one of the few women who has ever gone insane, and it frequently wasn't meant to be. Her loved ones made every effort to keep her from going insane, but those who she turned to for support chose to ignore her. Amanda is now being held accountable for all of the devastation that inspired her. Amanda Taylor's desire of becoming a well-known serial killer came to an end in this way. Admit it, when we look at horrible heroes and learn about their past, we unintentionally attempt it on ourselves. We all go through different stages in life, each with its own traumas and experiences. Have you ever had the urge to murder your neighbor because he parks in your space or plays loud music at night? However, they advise rethinking the narrative and simply shouting in the woods or by the lake. It restores moral equilibrium and soothes. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon. You.